Hello hipsters, Chris here from the podcast. Just hitting you up with a bit of information on our sponsors. We are very happy to say this season we are backed for the season by Chris and his team at 4elementswebdesign.co.uk. That's where you'll find them. You'll also find them on Twitter at 4elementsDES. What do 4Elements do? Well, if you're looking to build yourself the most hipsterish website possible, they are the guys for you. Branding, web design, marketing, video production, they're the four main elements, but they also look at so much more besides. Don't forget their tagline, beautiful websites, brands and strategic marketing solutions to take your business to the next level. Hit up Chris and his team, let them know that we sent you, and he might give you a little present. No promises, but what he will do is give you a fantastic website. So just a reminder, that is 4elementswebdesign.co.uk. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to this week's Football Hipsters Podcast. Technically, if you're following along on our website, this is week 11. Yes, we might have missed a couple of weeks in between, but I'm not telling anybody if you aren't. Thank you very much for tuning in, as always, to our loyal listeners. Or, of course, if you're a newbie, hopefully you enjoy tonight and you'll come back for some more. I'll introduce you to my fully stacked panel this evening. The whole crew all in one place. It's a beautiful thing. Firstly, it's the man behind the knobs. It's Mr. Josh Daw. Hello, Josh.
Good evening, Chris. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You've been called worse, and you know it. And introducing next, it's the shot shy Ross Bramble. Hello, Ross.
Who's he? Hi, Chris. Good evening, all.
More on that later. More on that analogy later. Making his return after a little bit of hiatus and chasing a random Russian man around the streets of Hull, it's Mr. Joel Melwar. Welcome back, Joel.
Evening, Chris. Evening, all.
And finally, last but not least, it's the wonderful Lana, who's very happy this evening. I can't think why. Hello, Lana.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm all good. And we shall hear plenty from you later on about why you're so happy. But before we do that, we're going to start at home, or in the UK anyway, for those of you UK listeners tuning in. And we're going to start this week with a bit of Premier League and a little dollop of Championship this week. In the absence of Leagues 1 and 2, we're going to go a bit Championship heavy. But we'll start in the Premier League, and we're going to kind of work our way backwards, and then we'll have a little bit of an update from the teams that our resident panelists follow as well. So I want to start with Manchester City and Arsenal on the Sunday game, mainly because it was probably the biggest two teams of the week, or the biggest game of the weekend, along with Chelsea Manchester United. So we'll start at the Etihad. Let me pick on who shall I pick on? Let me pick on Josh first of all. Josh. Looking at this, taking sort of an Arsenal hat off, if you will. Fair to say, I think the best side won, but there was a little bit of controversy. I have a little bit to say about this, but particularly when the score was at 2-1, there was a slightly controversial third goal. Also Arsene Wenger's comments about Raheem Sterling being quite light on his feet, shall we say, for the second goal, ultimately a sort of a clinching goal at the time of penalty. What did you make of Manchester City in this game in particular? We've seen them, how good they've been this season, but this game in particular, did they convince you, or was it just another sort of poor Arsenal away performance?
I'm a bit stuck on the fence with this one. I was quite positive going into the game. We have quite a good recent record against Manchester City and Pep Guardiola in general, really, other than the occasional dodgy Champions League game that we've had against his Barcelona sides. But otherwise, I thought we could easily take it to them if we got the tactics right. But I think with the Raheem Sterling incident, to be honest, I think Wenger's just trying to throw out a comment that's going to distract everyone else from the rest of the performance. Because although it wasn't bad, it wasn't great. And I think, for me, it was a penalty. Monreal, gets Sterling on the wrong side. And, if a player's good at falling over or not, are not really fussed. The defender's in the wrong position, ultimately. and Raheem Sterling's got the ability to go down there, and I'm not overly fussed by it. As with the Kevin De Bruyne goal that came in before that, I think, again, that was just a piece of individual quality. You know the kind of squad Man City have got, and I think arguably De Bruyne's been player of the season so far. So it was, I was not too shocked that we conceded. Ultimately, I knew that if Arsenal had going to get anything out of the game, they were going to concede a goal. Little bit surprised that Lacazette didn't start. For me, Alexis Sanchez is just not the same player that he was last season. Just seems to be something, a little bit of magic missing from him at the moment. He seems bang out of form. Whether or not he's affected by the Chile World Cup debacle at the end, we're not too sure. But I think ultimately the third goal really did stunt a promising Arsenal attack, which I thought could see Arsenal get an equaliser. They could have easily conceded under a goal that was, I think, not offside. We'll put it that way. It was still an open game there, but Arsenal were in the ascendancy when that decision came. I'm still shocked that a professional linesman cannot see that being offside, but that's what happens until we bring in VAR, and the referees are all really taken to task on decisions across the season. I think even if Arsenal have got decisions that have been down to the officials making mistakes, I'll happily forego those if it's just a clean slate for everybody, and we've got some kind of technology in place that can solve these issues. And the standard of refereeing has certainly declined over the season in a number of years. I'm not sure what needs to happen other than a full reform, and if this is the game that starts that, then I'm happy to have been a victim to it.
Yeah, I think you make some good points on the officiating there. I don't know, there were some comments after the game actually from Pep Guardiola, where obviously Arsene Wenger was notably quite irked by particularly the offside goal. I think Pep Guardiola's comment was sometimes Arsenal win in the 96th minute with a handball goal at Burnley, which I thought was quite cute in a way. Joel, we get a lot of our listeners. I thought we had a comment. I'll have to dig it out from last week's on our YouTube page. I think it might have been Thunder Road or someone similar. I'll dig it out in a second. Where they're saying, we always get the negatives about Pep, and everyone knows what myself and others think about him. But from your experience, when you supported, when you support Barcelona, when you had Pep as manager there, are you starting to see the blueprint, if you pardon the pun, on Manchester City? Is he now starting to get what he wanted from his squad that he didn't really have last season?
Yeah, I think we've discussed this before, and I think he thought last season he could go with half of what he required, i.e. the full-back areas were not what he needed, actually not what he required last season in terms of the quality of what he had in Sagna, Clichy and Zabaleta, etc. He then obviously acquired in the summer Mendy and Walker. And if you think about his teams fundamentally that he's had, they're so reliant on quality fullbacks, and it was just something that he didn't have. And I think he probably got about this stage last season and realised that they couldn't do what he needed them to do. And I think he addressed that quickly in the summer with the signings made. Obviously, Mendy's been injured and Del's done quite well in there, to be fair. But we're now seeing the kind of football that he wants to play, the dominating of possession. I think what's interesting, what we are seeing this season is they look a lot better defensively. And I don't particularly think that's because he's organising the team better. I think that's just because he's positionally the players the way he wants them to be. Otamendi looks improved, Stones looks improved. And it goes without saying, if you're having 70, 75, even 80% possession in a game, you are going to not concede many goals because it's not physically possible, is it? Although last season they did under Bravo, but that was because they just wasn't quite right in what they were doing. They look like they're going to score every time they go forward, which is obviously the way his teams play. And it's just total domination of the ball. But I think with a purpose as well. I think that's what separates him out from the rest, is that it's domination of the ball, but there is an end product with it. There is pace, it is entertaining, it is exciting. Sometimes session football can be dull, I don't think you can class his teams as disinterested. I know people, we've discussed it before. I think people have, don't believe everything you read about him. I just think he's, the greatest manager we've had because his teams are so entertaining to watch. I did think last season I was slightly concerned, thinking, God, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it in England, because that doubt just started to creep in when they were so poor at points last season. But I think now he kind of got his feet under the table. And I think he's taking each game as it comes. He's doing things slightly different in different games. And I think that's an appreciation of the league. But I do think they will steamroll the league, and I think they'll just keep moving forward and moving forward. And the confidence must be so high now because they're all playing at such a high level. There will be a dip, but I think if they can get enough points clear when that dip comes, it won't particularly affect them too much either.
Yeah, definitely. Credit where credit's due. He does seem to be getting a real tune out of them. I think a lot of people have got the Spurs and Man United games as their kind of barometer as to whether City could potentially.
Just one thing that is through his career is he has constantly improved players and high quality players. And I think if you look at the team right now, De Bruyne has improved, Sterling has improved. Leroy Sané was obviously young when he signed him, but he's improved since last season. The two centre halves, which I've mentioned, have improved. Fernandinho looks a much better player under Guardiola. I think it's that improvement of the players he has as well, which is crucial to the way he kind of develops the club and the squad.
I'd even add that Aguero's improved under him as well because of his all-round build-up play that's come in.
Yeah, he was a goal scorer before, wasn't he? Now he's an all-round sort of team-based player, and almost that pressure from Jesus has kicked him on another gear, isn't it? And he, of course, got the golden or the blue shoe award for the hitting the, is it 171? I want to say, I may be wrong, but certainly 170 goals plus, making him the greatest goal scorer in Manchester City's history. But yeah, and the De Bruyne thing, I mean, it's ironic that he was playing the team in Arsene Wenger's Arsenal that, of course, took Santi Cazorla, well, Joel, and took him and put him in that defensive midfield role before, of course, he got that unfortunate injury, and we might touch on that a little bit later on. But no, credit where due, City at the moment are unstoppable. But a team that are not unstoppable, Ross, I'll bring you in here to talk a little bit of Chelsea-Manchester United. 1-0 victory for Antonio Conte's men. Second half was where the goal came. Having had a mixed day, I think it's fair to say, Alvaro Morata scored a really stunning header, really was a stunning header into the top corner after Chelsea were much improved after the break. What did you sort of make of the overall Chelsea performance? There was no David Luiz. Conte spiky in press conferences over the last couple of weeks. Pressure was clearly on, but his side responded and made the point at the end of the game where he refused to shake hands with Mourinho. More handshake gate. But were you impressed with Chelsea overall in this game from what you saw?
What I saw was very limited, but certainly from the fallout, it sounds like the emphasis was more on what Man United did poorly than what Chelsea did well. Chelsea so far this season, I think we all know, have been very hit and miss consistently. Stories in the papers that Conte's not happy, unrest with the players, that sort of thing. I think there was a rumour going around that he might walk this weekend if things had gone badly against Manchester United. And I think it helps, actually, that he did come up against a Jose Mourinho team, because as we know, Jose Mourinho's recent record against the big sides hasn't been brilliant because of his style to make sure they get points and keep them rather than to go out and attack and try and earn more than they come in with. So I think he had the right opponent this weekend. I think Man United's style probably played into not just his style of play, but also the feeling around Chelsea that they had to go out and prove a point. So good performance and a very valuable win. But I think I would look more at Man United than I would at Chelsea for this weekend's game.
Yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. And Joel, I'll come back to you. Given your sort of geographical location, you'll see a fair amount in the press about Manchester United. Is all well up there? There's been a few little quips about Mourinho not being happy with his contract. There's been talk of player recruitment again. That there's this sort of, he's got that kind of scowly look about him again. He's a bit chirpy about. There were some comments about Lukaku from the media, not from me for a change, but from the media, sort of suggesting that maybe he hadn't quite been the signing that they thought he'd be. Is all well in Manchester? Or is there a little bit of the shine coming off all of a sudden?
Yeah, I don't think all is well. He's obviously they started the interview he did in for the French, whatever it was, online, I think it was, where he talks about PSG. I think we're getting to a stage where he's starting to wind down at the club. I think his 3 seasons is what he does. He's halfway through his second one. This is very typical when you look through his career. They've weirdly been affected, United, by Pogba's absence. I don't think Lukaku scored whilst Pogba's been out of the team. And what's not helping United massively is the fact that their most direct rival geographically is Manchester City, and they're absolutely romping away with it. I think Mourinho's style is what it is. I don't think the fans are particularly happy with it, even when they're winning, because it's not what they expect when they were spoiled with the football that they had during the 90s and under Ferguson's era. But I think they've had 3 or 4 years now of no success. They'll just take victories, so that's great. Yesterday's game highlighted it, I think, when they just go to stop and take a draw away, but they didn't manage to do it. And I think that's when you can really look at Mourinho. They're not even trying to go to win games. So when you lose, there's just absolute kind of negativity from the fans in terms of that, because you might as well have a go. Manchester City went to Stamford Bridge and played their own game and dominated and won. Now United completely went yesterday. Man marked Hazard in the first half. They just didn't look to play their own game. And I think this is Manchester United, I think, one of the biggest clubs in the world. I just think he's just too negative for that club. I think if he was taking, for example, I don't know, a West Brom there and was doing what he's trying to do, then you can understand it. But I think he's got enough quality at his disposal to put up a better fight than he's doing. But if you look at it, if you was to say to Guardiola, you need to play pragmatic football, you need to play defensive football, you need to get 1-0s, he would say, well, you've got the wrong man for the job. I think Mourinho is the wrong fit for the Man United job. They should have gone for somebody who believes in attacking football and will win in an attractive style. That isn't him, so you can't criticise him for playing negative football, because he's suddenly not at his stage in his career going to turn around and completely throw everything away he's ever done to appease the fans. So, out to appease the media, whatever it is, I just feel that all is not well. And while Man City keep winning and keep doing what they're doing, it's going to increase the pressure on Mourinho. And they're getting to a point in the season now where, particularly, a couple more weeks and a couple more dodgy results, they could be out of the title race before Christmas, which is crazy when you think of where they're at. And just quickly on those two, I thought them two were level pegging in the summer. They both spent big, both with second seasons with two super coaches. Both, going around, it's probably the 2 biggest clubs in England as it stands. And one's just pulling away massively from the other. And it'll be interesting to see what impact Ibrahimovic has, whether he comes in to play with Lukaku, because that could be a boost, but I only see one or the other. To be honest, I don't see both. So that's some of the headache that Mourinho's kind of created for himself, but we'll look to address, I guess.
Yes, and has been described in some quarters as Russ and Josh have just pointed out, a rich West Brom or a checkbook Pulis. A little bit harsh, probably, but
I think the counter you have to make, though, is he is second in the league to a record-breaking Manchester City side.
Yeah,
which is still pretty good. So I think in other seasons, Chelsea's and Inter Milan's and Real Madrid's have been top at this point because the competition hasn't been as strong as it is this year. So I wouldn't say he's failing miserably,
No.
But certainly I think contextually, I think this makes him look a lot worse than he actually is.
And you do wonder if there was a bit more flair and a bit more excitement about the way they were playing. I think maybe the supporters would be a little bit more comfortable with the fact that, yes, we're second, but we're playing good stuff. Whereas we're second behind a really good free-flowing side, and we're not playing very good football either. So it's a bit of a tough one. But it's one that will run and run. I do just quickly, Lana, just want to ask you, just before we move on to other games, what's the viewpoint of Mourinho from an overseas perspective? Not all of our listeners know you're in a different country, so what's the perspective, sort of in the Scandinavian sector, if you will, of Mourinho and how he conducts himself?
Not so very positive. I have a few United friends at work. One of them today said that he would rather go back to Moyes than continue with Mourinho, because he didn't understand how he could play Lukaku and not play to his strength, which I semi agree with him. He was like, I don't know what we were doing yesterday.
No, they just don't look like a side that is completely comfortable with the system, and how Martial doesn't get that side is beyond me.
Yeah,
Even though he can be hot and cold, but it's
It
just
didn't help yesterday that Morata played so well when it was like which one does either club want to sign? So United
yeah.
ended up signing Lukaku and not Morata, and he ended up having probably his best performance for Chelsea yesterday. So that doesn't help. And Lukaku was so quiet and poor again. So I think that was a bit unfortunate as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
My
agreed.
friend called Lukaku a lesser version of Giroud, and I was like, that's an insult to Giroud.
I'm not even going to comment on this one because, as our good friend, I'll give him a little shout out here. Emil Bergstrom commented last week. It was he and Thunder Road that were having a chat on our YouTube page, and they were saying, just for 1 week, you've made your point, you've made your feelings on Lukaku well known. Can we skip it for an episode or two? So I'll leave that smoking gun aside, and instead I shall move on to another smoking gun. We're going to skip through a couple of the other Premier League fixtures because there wasn't a vintage weekend, I think it's fair to say. But I do just want to get a little perspective on some of the other clubs that the guys and girls follow. So Ross, I'll start with you. It's another home defeat for Saints. It's another 1-0. It's another game where the fans are restless, and it's a game that you've largely performed well in, but not scored, and therefore it's cost you. Burnley and Sean Dyche taking the points for Sam Vokes as winner. What's your thoughts? Because I remember we were here last season under Claude Puel, and it almost feels a bit Groundhog Day. Do you still feel like there's things happening at St Mary's, or is it all feeling a little bit familiar again?
Very interesting this weekend because I think every Southampton fan went into this game thinking Burnley were going to win 1-0, and it's exactly what happened. Certainly my prediction, which unfortunately came true. There is a very, very strange feeling at the moment that this time last year under Claude, we were playing very similar to how we are now, but there were a lot of fans saying, give him time, he'll get this right, etc. We're now a year on, we've changed managers, we brought someone new in, and we're playing the exact same style. And Pellegrino has lost the fans quicker than Claude Puel did. There are very loud sections of St Mary's that are looking elsewhere now and saying he was a mistake. Some saying he is worse than Claude for the style that he's currently playing. I don't know if I would agree with worse, but I certainly agree with the same. It boggles my mind that a manager like Pellegrino would have taken this job apparently without looking back at what cost Claude the job, which was the style of football, because it's exactly the same. So now we have to ask, is it the manager or is it the players? Now, if it's the manager, then we have to then look at the board, because they've hired 2 managers in a row that have been the complete opposite of the Southampton way that the board preaches. Or it's the players, in which case we have to look at the replacements for some of our old players like Sadio Mane, Graziano Pella, who both left and we didn't really replace very effectively. It seems we're in this bizarre transitional stage where the board are telling us that we're still going in the same direction, but what we're seeing on the field suggests otherwise. And I think the fans are just frustrated with the clash between what the board are telling us and the message they preach, and then what we see on the field. Because if this is where we are as a club, if we're looking to stay up and be mid-table, then tell us, and maybe the mood will change. But if the board is still looking for us to be Champions League, and they said from the day we came up into the Premier League, we're not here to just make up the numbers, we're here to win it. But that philosophy doesn't seem to be being put into motion anymore, because we're not seeing the kind of replacements that we need to see. Like I say, Graziano Pella was never replaced. Boufal doesnent really replace Sadio Mane. Nathan Redmond was meant to be his replacement, but he's still growing. The 2 managers we've brought in, and Puel and Pellegrino, neither have really pushed us on. It just seems like there's this clash in ideology, and the fans are already quite frustrated with Pellegrino. It already feels like his time is drawing to a close, because November sees us play the Arsenals, the Manchester Cities, the Liverpools of the world. And if we're not careful, by the time we get to Christmas, we could be in a relegation fight. It's a genuine possibility at this stage, considering how poor we've been against the Burnleys that we've faced so far. So I'm not worried yet, but the main reason I'm not worried is just because when I watch Southampton, I don't care as much as I used to. And that's probably the most painful thing as a Southampton fan I could say, because I love my club and I want to see it do well, but I just don't care to watch them at the moment. And I just go into games thinking it's either going to be drab or it's going to be a defeat. And that's a philosophy that I haven't experienced for about 10 years now. So it's really, really difficult. At the same time, if you got rid of Pellegrino now, given Southampton's penchant for going for managers that are out of work, the only one that leaps to mind is Koeman, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. So it's also frustrating for me because the two managers that I wanted were Marco Silva and Nuno Espirito, both of whom are absolutely smashing it at Watford and Wolves. So a little sickening for me on a personal note, but it feels very very flat at the moment, and I don't think Pellegrino will go mid-season. I'm not sure we're that kind of club at the moment, but that's certainly the way the fans are heading at the moment.
Yeah, I know that feeling about losing interest in watching your team. I've felt a little bit similar this season, maybe for slightly different reasons, but yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. But I'm sure, Josh, you're certainly not feeling the same way about Brighton, who got a 1-0 victory at Swansea. So I'll give you an opportunity to have a quick chat about that one. Really, just overall thoughts. Glenn Murray, goal machine. Was it 4 in his last 3 now? After you cruelly wrote him off as a Premier League striker. But all jokes aside, it's a good result, isn't it, for Brighton? And what, 7th in the table? Sorry, 7th. Burnley 7th. They're 8th in the table, but 15 points, 4 defeats, 4 wins, 3 draws, a dead level 0 goal difference. You'd have taken that, wouldn't you, after 11 games, and looking like there's a platform to build on going on from here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a wonderful result. I think Swansea, to be fair to Brighton, didn't really turn up. From what I've heard of friends that were at the game, as well as what I caught on Match of the Day, that it was a poor Swansea side, but overall it was just another fantastic display from Duncan Duffy, as well as Glenn Murray getting a bit of luck, to be honest. Goal off his thigh, to put it past. So I think overall that was I was really happy with the result. Surprisingly, Pascal Gross wasn't involved in the goal. So it does show that he doesn't necessarily have to be involved for a goal to go in, which it did look like that when I was at the Southampton game. So I think otherwise, yeah, I was incredibly happy with the result. 15 points is more than I would have thought Brighton would have got at this point in the season. And if we keep going at this rate, I'd be very, very happy. I think there still needs to be an improvement up front. I'm not going to give Glenn Murray all the credit right yet, but I think there is still need that there are more goals needed in this team. But with the defence the way it is at the moment, I don't think it's a problem at the moment in time.
No, you'll take it. Take it absolutely, and very good result for them. We will just quickly run through a couple of other results, and there's just a few brief topics I want to cover before we move down to the Championship. Stoke and Leicester played out a 2-2 draw in a strangely entertaining game, actually, at the Stoke, the Bet365 Stadium, I think it's called these days. Iborra for Leicester, Shaqiri equalising, Riyad Mahrez deciding to turn up. Before that man, Peter Crouch off the bench again to net the leveller, which was a game that could have gone either way, but yeah, quite entertaining on Saturday. Huddersfield got another victory, 1-0 over West Brom. I'll come back to that in a second. Newcastle lost at home to Bournemouth with a last gasp goal from Steve Cook. Big points those for Bournemouth, who slowly but surely seem to be starting to wake up this season, which is always a good thing. Certainly for their supporters. West Ham won Liverpool 4, a result that saw Slaven Bilic lose his job. I will come back to that in a second. Goals for Salah, twice for Salah in that case. Joel Matip and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, with Manuel Lanzini also on the score sheet for the home side. Spurs beating Crystal Palace 1-0 on Sunday. Heung-min Son with the winning goal at Palace, putting up a really good performance, probably deserved something from that game, but alas didn't get anything. And Everton, the stunning 3-2 victory, having been 2-0 down at home to Watford. Richarlison and Kabasele before Niasse, Calvert-Lewin and a 95th minute penalty winner from Leighton Baines in a game that saw 11 minutes of stoppage time. The three things I just want to pull out of that is Tony Pulis at West Brom. A lot of action on the phone-ins in the UK about style, value for money, whether West Brom could actually are going to progress under Pulis, and also the dismissal of Slaven Bilic at West Ham. Let me give Ross. I'll give you Tony Pulis to start with. Is there a growing cloud coming over the West Brom, or coming over the Hawthorns and the West Brom supporters? Because it doesn't seem like all is well there amongst them, particularly in the way he sets his teams up.
No, I think Tony Pulis has a glass ceiling, which is a great shame because I think he's fantastic at what he does. But he does have a glass ceiling where he doesn't seem to be able to push the team on to the next level because that's just not the way his style lends itself. I can't remember which phone-in show it was, but there was a West Brom fan that summed it up quite nicely by saying that by the time the West Brom board get up the nuts to sack Tony Pulis, the only manager that will be able to save them from relegation is Tony Pulis. So it's a strange situation with West Brom because they are going backwards and they need something fresh, but mid-season it's going to be difficult to find that. I think he's a brilliant manager for what he does, and I don't think he deserves a top 4 job or anything like that, but I think he's a manager that you should stick with for an entire season, even if he does poorly, because you'll stay up, or you'll be in with a very good chance of staying up come the end of the season, and then make the decision in the summer. So wouldn't shock me to see him go down that route, but it does start to feel like at the moment his time is winding down.
Yeah, it does a bit. And Joel, Slaven Bilic, manager that's gone today. Talk is David Moyes and Phil Neville is the dream team. Sounds a little bit strong, but the choices, shall we say, at this stage that might be replacing him. Any surprise at all that Bilic has gone? It did seem like he was a broken man even from the start of the season, didn't it?
Yeah, I think this season was meant to be an improvement on last season, which was really poor, but there's obviously mitigation to that last season in terms of the stadium move and whatnot. I think I saw him today say that he expected to get the sack. It's probably relieved, to be honest, because it's just been really dismal. I think the result at Palace probably did it. And when you look at the application of those players, it was highlighted on Monday Night Football, and then you look at it at the weekend, they're just players going through the motions. I think what does affect it slightly for West Ham, and what's affected it probably is the fact that Bilic is probably always going to go at the end of the season. So if you're a player, you know he's going to go. Therefore, it's the whole thing of you're not kind of playing for your future because there's no decision going to be made on your future. Where if you know a manager's there for the next 5 years, you're obviously going to put more in. I think that's a natural thing. So I think that by keeping Bilic's contract open in terms of that, they'll review at the end of the season, they've kind of got themselves into the situation. And I think they've just got a lot of players who are just taking the proverbial and not actually putting in a decent shift. And when the managers needed it, they've not really done it for him. And I think Saturday at that stadium just felt like a lot of games you've seen at that stadium where the opposition comes, they like the surroundings, and they absolutely rip West Ham to shreds. And there's kind of loads of shots on the TV of Bilic looking kind of really forlorn on the touchline. It's just a really kind of very similar pattern emerged in that game. And you look at replacements, I think the natural one would be Allardyce, but obviously they can't do that. I am surprised at Moyes, but I'm also not, because I think they'll be hoping to get the Moyes at Everton, who kind of dug in, was resilient, got players kind of working hard. Everything what Bilic probably wasn't getting out of those players, Moyes can probably do. He's probably returning back to what the club, Sociedad was an absolute disaster. Sunderland were doomed anyway, and United was just a step up too far for him. West Ham is about where they expect Moyes to be. I just don't know if he's been gone from Everton too long to try and revert back to what he did so well there. Because I think when he joined United, a lot of people was kind of a little bit surprised, but also he'd earned his stripes at Everton. But now he's kind of damaged goods. But it's a good job for him, really, because he was probably looking at dipping into the Championship, I would think, for his next job. So it's a decent step forward for him in terms of getting a good club. I don't think he'll be there next season, to be honest. And I think we're now living in an era where there's a lot of these kind of short-term manager positions coming up. Allardyce is kind of making a career off it, even if he goes to Everton. And I think Moyes is looking to do that and probably getting a decent bonus if he keeps West Ham in the league now, which is disappointing that they're in a relegation battle, to be fair.
Yeah, it does seem like a club that is a little bit off the rails, and as a man who supports a team with management structure issues, I think West Ham can join that queue for the same reasons. The last one I want to pick up on, Lana, just for something different, I just want to ask you your thoughts on Everton quickly. As a club, sort of looking in from overseas, would you look at Everton as a club that potentially should be looking abroad at some of the up-and-coming managers that you could probably pull a few from Italy and France out in particular, or should they be looking at the tried and trusted sort of the Sean Dyches of this world, the Burnley manager who's, he might not have been proven at the top level, but is doing a fantastic job? Which way would you go if you were Farhad Moshiri and you had all this money at a club like Everton?
I would probably go for a foreign manager, but like Ross said, it depends on the philosophy of the club and what they expect of a manager. If they want to keep their traditions and stick to an English manager, or think outside the box and go for someone abroad like a French manager. Not that Villa had any success with Remy Gard. So I feel like maybe some managers are too not scared, but they don't want to come to England and coach because they know how easy it is to get fired unless you're at a club where you're trusted and the board will, show their fate and be patient with you. And I don't think many clubs are like that. Everton doesn't strike me as a club that would be patient with a manager that would want to come in and put his, mark and print on the team. I mean, if Wenger was the manager, he would have been sacked ASAP.
Yeah, that's 100%. I do wonder, like you said, French managers there, someone like Christophe Galtier maybe, or even the one that really surprises me that never gets mentioned in any of these jobs at the moment is Laurent Blanc. I know he's not exactly a stellar name, but he didn't do a bad job at PSG, albeit
he didn't.
I'm surprised he's not linked with these jobs. I'm really, really surprised.
That's because he took a break, but now he's linked to the Lille job.
Yeah.
And also, there's talks about maybe Marseille bringing him in.
Yeah.
I think even Milan were linked to him at one point.
And he knows the Premier League, doesn't he? Go on, Josh.
Yeah, I was going to say he was also linked to the US national job. I think that's the big one that he might be interested in. So.
Yeah.
That would be a good opportunity for him because I don't think he necessarily did badly with France. I think it was more the fact that Nasri cost him his job.
Yeah, it didn't help, did it?
No, and we all know that French players have a tendency to make sure that the manager is the downfall.
Takes the
unfortunately, but unfortunately, Deschamps has gotten away with that. That man has 9 lives.
Yeah, we should probably mention that just to wind you up later on. But there's 3 clubs that potentially, well, obviously one has changed manager and 2 that may well be about to. So okay, that's the weekend that was in the Premier League then. We are at the stage of the season where we probably should let you know what's happening in table, so we will just quickly tell you that Manchester City are 8 points now ahead of Manchester United in top of the Premier League, 31 points, 11 games played, they've won 10 and only drawn one of them. Amazing. Manchester United, as you say, sit in second with Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool and Arsenal in the top 6. Burnley incredibly in 7th, Brighton we mentioned earlier 8th, with Watford and Huddersfield making up the top 10. Down at the bottom, doesn't get much better for Palace, but at least they've got some goals and some points now, 4 points from their 11 played. They are bottom. Swansea having a dramatic fall down the table at the moment, 8th, and second bottom West Ham also in the relegation zone on 9 points, with Bournemouth's win at the weekend lifting them out of the drop zone up to 17th, with West Brom careering downhill in 16th, with Everton, Stoke, Saints, Leicester and Newcastle reading up to 11th place. There is, of course, an international break coming up next week, which probably means that we'll have a week off the podcast, but nevertheless, fixtures to look out for probably after the international break. We'll probably just cover quickly just to say that there is a North London derby when the games resume, which I think will be on what date?
It's the 12:30 kickoff.
And that's on 18th, is it? 18th of November?
On the Saturday.
Yes,
so that will to lose the early kickoffs. Sorry. Guys.
Yeah, let's not mention that. Let's leave that for another day. But yes, you're absolutely right. So,
oh Lord, we're away to Liverpool that weekend. Oh no.
Good times. So we're all going to be really depressed basically this time next or 2 weeks
Not
time.
me.
So no, you'll be all right. But yes, so that was the weekend that was in the Premier League. Let's now pop along to the Championship. Now there was a full round of FA Cup first round fixtures, which I think Ross will pick out just a couple of the highlights for us in a minute. But we're going to go Championship heavy first of all. So before we pick on a few clubs, Josh, what happened in the week that was in the Championship?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. We'll start on the Friday. I'm going to fly over to you in a second for this. Back to you. Wolves won 2-0 versus Fulham. I know you saw this game, Chris. Fulham were your hipster team of choice, and you also got to see Bonatini, the goalkeeper, as you unfortunately put last week.
Thank you for that.
Have a decent game and get on the score sheet. So, how do you feel about these two teams?
Well, yeah, my calls were Forest and Fulham this season, so that's working out well. This is why you and Ross are our Championship experts, and I am not. But no, I just wanted to. Fulham weren't great. I thought they actually performed sort of fairly well given the opposition they were playing. But no, I just wanted to give some praise to Wolves. I mean, I've followed Nuno Espirito Santo at Porto, and he was always a pretty decent manager, but I wasn't sure how he would adapt. I wasn't sure how the sort of project Wolves would go with all this money and Mendes and all this jazz going on. But I was just really, really impressed with them, and some of the players they've got there that are not the stellar names. Everybody's talking about sort of Ruben Neves and the winger whose name is Helder Costa, is it, or Helder
Costa?
It is Helder Costa, yeah. So they're kind of the standout names, but I had no idea that John Ruddy was their goalkeeper, which I'll be honest surprised me. And they just the lads, is it the Scottish lad who put in the assists for I think it's for the opening goal, who I'm just looking up now. His name has escaped me, but I'll find it in a minute. But Barry Douglas is the one I'm thinking of. Who am I right in saying he used to play for Dundee United? I'm sure there was a Barry Douglas Dundee United. I'm going to look it up. But yes, Dundee United. There you go. Oh, Christ, I need to get out more. I really do. But yeah, he was really impressive, and it's a player that you might look at and think, okay, in amongst all these stars, I was quite surprised to see how good a game he had. I was impressed with is it Roman Saiz as well in midfield. Connor Cody I've seen a little bit of before. And they just look like a really well-structured and well-oiled machine. And obviously, yeah, good old goalkeeper, Leo Bonatini, up front looks a goal threat every time. His flick-on goal for that, I think it's the second goal with a little flicked header, was very, very clever. And against a Fulham side that, yeah, clearly are struggling at the moment, but they dispatched them so comfortably and they never really looked under any sort of pressure. Tactically very astute, 2 up inside 26 minutes, and the game was dead. So, yeah, I just wanted to give them a bit of praise because I do try and keep in touch with the Championship where I can. Yeah, credit where credit's due. I think they're going to be one of the favourites if they aren't already to be in the top 2 at the end of the season, but obviously top at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. We shall fly on to Reading, who managed to win away at Derby County. That ends Derby County's 8-match unbeaten run, losing 4-2. It's a bit of a shock result, that one, personally. Another one that I didn't see coming, Norwich losing 2-1 to Bolton. A last-minute consolation goal for Norwich there takes Bolton off the bottom of the table. We'll go into who replaces them in a second. Joel, Hull lost 4-1, unfortunately, away to Sheffield United. 4 second-half goals from Leon Clark. What's going on at Hull City this season? Because I don't think any of us expected them to really put in a performance like this.
No, it's appalling. It's getting worse, Nathan. 3 games in a week, 3 defeats, 2 at home, conceded, I think it was 10 goals. There's a lot of talk in Hull. Obviously, the majority of the fans, you can argue, are anti the owners. So therefore, they're naturally backing the manager because, they're blaming the owners for the situation that they're in. I don't buy it. I think Slutsky is not out of his depth. I think he can't see the wood for the trees. It's a different team every single week. He's making substitutions at half time. I think it's 5 out of 6 games. He's brought people off at half time and completely changed the formation. Players are playing out of position. Right backs are playing left backs are playing centre half. It's just a mess. and you're now struggling to see in November a style of play, a formation. It's literally like, and this sounds really awful and harsh, if they turned around and said this isn't actually Leonard Slutsky, it's somebody who's just a novice at football and he's been running the team, we just want to see how he'd do, you would believe it, because it's almost that clueless. They can't defend. There's no organisation. They get done on set pieces. They get done with balls into everything is wrong. The only shining lights that they've got are that they've got good wingers in Grzycki and Bowen. Fraser, Campbell and Dicko are decent. Hernandez getting injured was big for him, but apparently he was leaving anyway if he didn't get injured. He has lost a lot of players, but they've also brought a lot of players in. He just doesn't seem to know what to do with the team, and it's sad because he seems a really decent bloke and he's kind of embraced living in Hull and he's done a few bits and you kind of feel he's done, that side's fine. It's just he seems clueless. And again, you can guarantee if he does stay, the next game will be a completely different team again and it'll be pretty much the same result. I think they need to make a decision on him. I think they need to, unfortunately, I don't like to see managers lose a job, but I think we're only going down. And it's not what people expected whatsoever. I look at the squad and I think it's top 10 because you've still got enough quality in it, coupled with some, decent prospects from Chelsea like Tomoriana. There's decent players in that team. It's just here's the issue. And I think coming off the back of having Silva at the back end of last season, it's just such a stark contrast. And I think the argument I've got with it is Silva came in and within a week we played 2 games and you could see what he was trying to do. Could see the way we wanted to play. With Slutsky, we're now, we're 15, 16 games in, potentially. You cannot actually see what we're even trying to do. If you say to the fans, what is this team? Nobody has a clue. Whether it's possession-based, whether it's counter-attack, whether it's, looking to nick 1-0s, looking to outscore teams, nobody actually knows. And that's just really worrying. I think that's what they've got to address. Whether they do or not, the owner is generally loyal to managers, and I think they'll keep him. But I think he might walk as well. But it's really knackered him for a bigger job in England because this was always to be a stepping stone for him. And it's going to leave a real black mark against his name, to be honest.
Yeah, especially as he spent so much time over in this country trying to study the game as well. It does seem to be like he's fallen a bit flat on his face. Another game that we're going to have to look at, Sheffield Wednesday got a 2-1 win against Aston Villa. However, John Terry has taken all of the headlines, I think, for this game with a metatarsal injury that looks to see him for probably out for the rest of the season. And Ross, we had a question in from Dylan Weldon just regarding Sunderland and Birmingham and their starts to the season. They lost to Borough and Barnsley respectively at the weekend. I know that Borough team was not very good on Sunday, but yeah, what's going on with these two teams?
Well, Sunderland have been rotten to the core for a number of seasons. I think we're just seeing finally the culmination of all those years where every single season they seem to be swapping a manager, changing the team completely, and then sacking the manager halfway through the season. I think Martin O'Neill was in there, Paolo Di Canio was in there, Dick Advocat was in there. Sunderland, I think this is just reaping what they sowed. They needed this, and they still need this. They need to go through this. They need to purge their side of all of these players. They need to scrub the deck clean. I said this 2 or 3 seasons back now. They need to be relegated. They need to go through this because from it they will come back stronger. But for now, it is, I imagine, a worse kind of hell for Sunderland fans after X amount of seasons being kicked and beaten in the Premier League to now be in the Championship and facing the exact same thing is quite tough, I imagine. And Birmingham, I mean, I think we all kind of knew that Birmingham were going to come off the rails at some point when Harry Redknapp stayed on. He was a poor choice in terms of a long-term manager. He did the Harry Redknapp thing of buy all the players, put them in positions and see if it works. And it didn't because the Championship doesn't let you do that. And unfortunately, they just backed the wrong horse, I think. Second time in a row after going for Gianfranco Zola over Gary Rowett. It's another club that's reaping what they sowed when they got rid of Rowett in the first place. They've made some poor managerial choices since then, and it's now just regressing. The important thing is they got a very good manager in now, in Steve Cottrell, who I think is the best choice for that job at the moment. And I still have high hopes that he'll keep them up this season. But for Sunderland, I don't know who's taking that job. There's rumours that it could be John O'Shea. I think you're at that level with Sunderland now where you have to take a punt on a new manager that's just cutting his teeth, because I'm not sure an established one looks at the Sunderland job this season and says, yeah, that's what I want to take on. I think in the summer, when they're probably in League One, you could probably attract a Kenny Jackett style manager that could look at them and say, right, I can rebuild this team. But midway through a season, the only person that's going to take this job is someone that needs to go and prove themselves, or has never had one of these kinds of levels of jobs before.
I've heard that it's Ali McCoy's with Walter Smith, not assisting him, but kind of above him, kind of mentoring him. Obviously, McCoy was at Sunderland, wasn't he?
Very interesting one. I'm not sure that's going to come off for them. If it does, if that's who's going to become the manager, I'm not sure that's going to work for them. But yeah, I don't see who's looking at this job right now in the state that it's in and thinking, I can save this club. I think there are going to be a lot of managers that would have said, if this was the summer and you'd just been relegated to League One, absolutely. But for right now, I can only see this hurting my reputation. So I don't know who they go for. I'll be interested to see who it is, because their development as a manager for the rest of the season will be fascinating to watch. But essentially, for me, I think these two clubs are, like I say, reaping what they sowed. They're two clubs that are in a bad shape. Chairman making bad decisions, and it's just finally coming home to roost.
Sunderland in particular as well. It's a massive club, isn't it? I was listening to Radio 5 and they were talking to Phil Neville and somebody, I can't remember who else it was on Radio 5. They're talking about the club and they're saying if somebody, I know it's a massive if, but if somebody goes in there and gets that club right, everything is there, isn't it? Absolutely everything. And you just wonder if they need, forgive the phrase, but do they need a passion wagon as a manager, or do they need somebody who's really tactically astute and aware and do what Wolves have done, bring in somebody who is maybe foreign and can just try something different. But you do wonder which direction they're going to go in. Also, our friend Pat Ormsby tweeted the podcast tonight, said, are the rumours that AFC Freddy 8, that's myself of course, will be next West Ham manager? Well, all I can say, Pat, is it's more likely that I'll be West Ham manager than Sunderland, because I'm not moving up there. It's bloody cold.
Just to finish on Sunderland quickly, if I was Sunderland chairman, the name at the top of my managerial list would be the Shrewsbury Town manager, Paul Hurst. Be a massive risk for Paul Hurst, but if I'm the chairman at Sunderland, that's who I'd go for. Yeah, it's risky, but why not?
Yeah, he was certainly, that name was battered around that he was potential there, but as you say, Ross, there's a lot of managers there that don't want to touch that job with a barge pole.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? I want to also, just before I hand back to you, Josh, as well, just a little shout to Dylan Weldon, at Dylan Weldon for that question. He always asks some really good questions, particularly Championship and beyond. So thank you, Dylan. We appreciate the question. So back to you, Josh. Where were we?
Well, I was just about to pass over to Ross for the FA Cup first round that occurred at the weekend. So, Ross, over to you.
Yeah, I'm not going to take you through all of them because we'll be here for another hour, but there were some shocks. I think I'm right in saying there were 6 non-league teams that were definitely going to go through to the second round, given how the fixtures had gone. I could be 1 or 2 off on that, but it was an enormous number. And we do obviously have a couple through. Slough Town, I think, are the lowest ranked sides to win it. They won 6-0 away at Gainsborough. I think they're in the 6th tier. They could be 1 or 2 lower, but that's a massive, massive result for Slough. Maidstone, we have a Maidstone fan, don't we? I can't think of his name. Who's our Maidstone fan?
Oh, we do, don't we? Who is that?
It's Tom?
It could be. Yes. We'll say it's Tom.
If it is, he had a brilliant weekend, because 4-2 away win to Cheltenham Town, which is absolutely fantastic for Maidstone.
If it isn't, whoever you are, please let us know. Make yourself known, because we are terrible at intel. But yes, carry on.
It's not often that Maidstone are going to get a shout out on this podcast, so claim it while you can.
Yes.
Oxford City, who are not Oxford United, who are playing in League One. Oxford City managed to beat Colchester United away 1-0. Fantastic result for Oxford City as well. Hereford, I think that's a name that quite a lot of us remember from the good old days. They're on their way back up now. They are a Phoenix club, but they're travelling back up the divisions. They got a 1-0 home win over AFC Telford. Fylde, I believe, got a 4-2 win against Kidderminster, so they're through to the next round as well. I can't think of any others off the top of my head. Someone may be able to put me in the direction of another shock, but
I'd say
can't think of another major one. Was it
Fylde have just drawn Wigan?
Was the other one?
Sorry.
Oh, yes. Wigan in the next round, haven't they? Yes,
they have indeed.
And indeed, Boreham Wood did indeed win. I'm just going to look up who they were. Yeah, they were. I think they were one of the biggest stories, actually, weren't they? The weekend.
Yes, Boreham Wood's win over Blackpool.
That's Blackpool. Yes, of course.
Blackpool in the news for something else now.
Yes, Josh, did you want to quickly mention that news about Blackpool and the Oyston family, who apparently are not, they're making themselves even more unpopular today, I believe.
Yeah, the Oystons have just lost a court battle and have been made to buy out Valerie Bellicon, and it's £31 million. It's been told that he needs to pay out in order to buy him out, with 10 million coming up front. So I'm not sure how that leaves them, because as a Blackpool fan, you now got Oyston running the whole of that club. I think it's a big fine, but perhaps that kind of forces him to have to sell it on, as he's got this bill to pay for.
Yes, well, I mean, we have a GoFundMe page for the Football Hipsters podcast, which is still open, by the way. If you have £31 million down the back of the sofa and you want to donate it to us, please get along to our GoFundMe page. To be honest, we'd take £31, but obviously the Oyston family are going to be £31 million poorer shortly. So not good for them. But that was the weekend that was in the FA Cup, and Paul Tisdale watched as well, Ross. Exeter through after beating Heybridge Swifts, so Tisdale is continuing. That's always good. We like the Tiz on this pod.
The mighty Heybridge Swift.
Indeed, yeah, what a name. Sad to see Truro City go out though for local interest as far as down the road in Cornwall for me, but such is life. Okay, right. Well, I think that is pretty much everything as far as the English side of things goes. We're going to do something really, really rare here, because we don't do this very often, but I'm just going to very quickly touch on Scotland this week, because we haven't sort of done anything Scottish for a while, and I'm sure we might have at least one Scottish listener. So, Josh, do you know anything about a certain record that was beaten this weekend in the Scottish Premier League?
Celtic did the most unbeaten run, isn't it?
That is absolutely right. Yes, indeed. They I don't know how far back this record actually stretches. I would imagine it's quite a while. I thought it was quite. It's
100 years.
Is it 100 years?
And it was set by Celtic.
So there you go. So they've beaten their own record. There was 130 years was when the club was formed, 130 years ago, which is quite an impressive number in itself. And yes, with their victory, is it 64 games unbeaten? I think it is. And they have surpassed the previous record. I think it's 64 anyway, or is it 63?
I think it's 68, but
is it 68? Oh, 63 domestic games unbeaten. I'm reading it off of their actual Twitter feed now. So that's domestic games. So it could well be 68 if you total it up across domestic fixtures. But nevertheless, whether it be 63 or 68, who cares? It's an impressive feat. I think the only downside, of course, is that only goes to show that there is such a little competition, dare I say, in Scotland, and obviously Rangers sacking their coach Paolo Cocchina and sort of looking for a replacement there. It all seems to be a little bit of a mess as far as that goes, but nevertheless, you can only beat what is in front of you at the end of the day, and Celtic have been beating basically everyone, so you can't knock them, can you? Quick update on the table. They're actually but they're 3 points clear of Aberdeen in second with 30 points for their 12 played. Hibernian, nice to see them on the way back, 25 points. They're in third with Rangers, Motherwell and Hearts in the top six. Dundee are having a wretched time. They're 5 straight defeats. They're 12th and bottom with Partick Thistle, Kilmarnock, Hamilton Academical. There's an old-fashioned name. Ross County and St Johnstone up to 7th in the table. I think it's fair to say Celtic are probably going to win the league, but you never know. For all its knocks, if you live up in Scotland and it's the league you follow and you want to tell us about the club you support, get in touch. So there's a very quick Scottish update for you. But we're going to go back into Europe now, and we're going to talk a little bit of La Liga next. So Joel, first things first, we had a question last week from one of our loyal listeners who I don't know if Josh has got the name of the person. I'm frantically trying to find the question now, so do chirp in if you can find the person in question there, Josh.
Arian?
Was it Arian, was it? Right, superb. Okay, so crikey, your voice has got high, Josh. Joel, the question was naming your sort of 11 for the season so far in respective leagues. Of course, you were absent last week, so you're back this week. So who is your La Liga 1 to 11 as far as the season goes so far?
Okay, so I've gone for a 4-3-3. I've got Ter Stegen in goal. He's only conceded 4 all season. Looks a lot more stable this year, second season being the number 1. I've gone quite heavily Barcelona influenced this, but they are kind of 4 points clear, 8 points clear of Madrid. Nelson Semedo, right back, obviously signed from Benfica, settled in really well to Barcelona, and he looks a key part of the team now. He's alternating the position with Sergio Roberto, but Roberto's out for 6 weeks now, so he'll probably look to cement his place a lot more in the next coming weeks. He's been a revelation, basically. He's been a really positive signing. I've gone for Mantovani from Leganés at centre-half with Lenglet from Sevilla. And I think Lenglet was from Nancy, I think.
He was.
Sevilla signing. Euros. Yeah, it looks really, really good.
We love him. Carry on.
Yeah, so he's in there. And Jordi Alba left back. Jordi Alba and Semedo are quickly becoming part of kind of Valverde's essential to his plan in terms of attacking fullbacks. And then the midfield 3, I've gone for Carlos Soler from Valencia. He's part of kind of the revelation that's happening at Valencia. He's very highly rated and is crucial to the way Valencia are playing. And he's already attracting massive interest from other clubs, but he has a high buyout, so I don't see him leaving anytime soon. Then I've gone for a player who started the season really well, who had a big move to Madrid and it didn't quite work, and he went back to his club, so that's Iramendi. He obviously went from Sociedad to Madrid for, I think it was 25 million euros. It never quite worked for him. He looked out of place there. He's never got going. But since he's gone back to Sociedad, he's done well. And then recently he's done really, really well. And this season he's been a crucial player for Sociedad. And then there'll be an interesting one. I've gone for Paulinho, who a lot of kind of talk around when he signed for Barcelona from China around what a strange move. He's been outstanding, to be honest. He's exactly what they needed. He's brought kind of dynamism, power. He links up really well with Messi. He's already got 3 goals. So he's really been a kind of a good signing for Barca. So he makes it in. And then the front 3, so obviously there's Messi in there because no team would be made up without him. Obviously leading goal scorer, leading assists, I think he is in the league. He's just obviously central to everything that Barcelona do. And then the other 2 are Bakambu from Villarreal, having a really, really good season. He's just a player I rate really highly. I can't believe no club in England's taken a punt on him because he's been banging in goals now for Villarreal since he's gone there. It's kind of underrated, so I don't know why. And then an interesting one for everybody will be Zaza. He's been absolutely tremendous at Valencia. He's really regained his form, shown the form that probably got him the bigger moves. Looks completely different to the player that we saw at West Ham. He's playing with confidence. He looks a threat. He's playing a team that suits his strengths. So, yeah, that's the 11. So I don't think there's any real surprises in there. Obviously, I think Zaza may be a surprise to English listeners due to the fact that he was absolutely abysmal at West Ham. But then maybe that says more about West Ham than Zaza, maybe, potentially. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it does. I suppose the only noticeable one, Asensio for Real Madrid.
Yeah, it started the first 4 games really well, and then he's faded, and then obviously got a good goal at the weekend. But I think that dip was understandable given his age, but he didn't kick on kind of September, October like people thought he wouldn't. He fell out of the team again. But that start of the season in August, he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, and I don't think you could get him in because of the midfield you got, but Christian Stuani, another former Premier League player, has been having a lovely old time at Girona, hasn't he, this season? But I think it's a fair team. I think the only one you're going to have to justify...
me?
Yeah, I knew you were coming.
Hello?
Lana, who's Joel missed? Go on, tell the listeners.
We need to have a talk, Joe. Like, seriously, you and I, we need to meet up in a park after midnight, because we need to have a serious
Doesn't sound sinister
talk.
at all, does it?
No, I mean... How dare you exclude Umtiti? Like, I need a valid reason, preferably 10 pages long.
To be fair, I'm a massive fan, but the last 2 weeks he's made 2 really bad errors that have gone unpunished, or could quite easily have gone punished, and so I ruled him out purely on that. But obviously,
Because of 2 weeks, he's been great otherwise. I mean, I get long late because he's been really good, and he's also scoring as well.
He'll make the team of the year without a shadow of a doubt. It's just up to now. I think
he's on the bench, Lana.
Yeah.
That's disgraceful.
Don't make it worse. It's already bad as it is. You already wound her up. Don't make it worse.
I have a question. What's your views on Dean? Like, is he doing well? Because for France, he's benched by Kursawa because Deschamps is retard.
He's a really, really good backup. He's not Jordi Alba. I don't think he ever will be in terms of that blistering pace going forward. He looks to me like an old style fullback who's quite happy to sit in, do what's required, but not overly look at getting forward. He's good because he's both-footed, I think he is, so he can play right or left back. So he's just a good replacement. Alba's unfit, or to give Alba a rest, but I don't think Alba's position is particularly under threat from Digne. But for what they paid for him, was it 50 million euros? He's decent at that price.
Yeah, decent signing. Yeah, nothing stunning, but decent at that level. What else happened then? You haven't been on for a couple of weeks, and Joel, so bring us up to speed on the last weekend's action. Barcelona getting back to winning ways. They beat Sevilla. Not completely convincing, but did enough.
Yeah, first 20 minutes they were superb. They could have been 3 or 4 up. Carried on playing well. Then conceded Sevilla kind of turned up in the second half and then got a goal on the hour mark from a set piece. Really good finish by Pizarro. And then within 3 or 4 minutes, Barca were back in the lead. It was Alcacer got 2. They played him kind of off the right hand side / up front with Suarez, and he's a player who's kind of took loads of criticism, I think unfairly, because he's never going to be a starter when Suarez is there. But people are critical that he don't come on and score when he gets 14 minutes or, comes on at the end of a game. And I think people keep pinning up his goal scoring record. But I think he's got 9 in 9 starts, which isn't bad going, I don't think, at all. But I think he is thrown down a mark as far as he was having a dip in form. But he's getting some absolute pelters on social media. It's just ridiculous, basically saying he's finished and whatnot. I think the truth is he's got an injury, and he's trying to play through the injury up until this international break. He's going to have a quick op, but he's just taking some ridiculous criticism. He's still missing chances. He's just not scoring. But overall, it was a decent performance by Barcelona. I think, obviously, I haven't been on for 2 or 3, 4 weeks, and they are in a better position than they was at that point. I think if we cast our mind back to August, it was appalling. Everything was wrong off the pitch, on the pitch. They've just been thumped by Madrid. Now you sit here in the first week of November and they're 8 points clear of Madrid, 4 in front of Valencia, and won 11 out of 13, and unbeaten as well still. So it's really, really positive in that respect.
Yeah, definitely. I did watch little bits of that in between the Derby de la Lanterna, so I was kind of on double duty on Saturday, but did enough. And good to see Paco Alcacer getting goals, because obviously he struggled until that particular game. Speaking of struggling, I want to turn the attention to Atletico Madrid a little bit as well. Sounds silly to say struggling because they're unbeaten in 5, won 2 of the last 3. What is it that's, in your opinion, that's not clicking with them at the moment? Because they just don't seem to be the side of old. Is it the fact that Simeone has kind of, it's harsh to say messed them around, but he has kind of, well, I'll go, actually, no, I'll stay, well, I might not go, well, I might not stay. There's the whole sort of Griezmann thing of, well, he's probably going to go, then he stayed. Is it just a bit of up and downness with them, a little bit of insecurity?
Yeah. I think what's happened with them is they were so successful playing a certain way, which was counter-attack, defensive, solidity, play for an hour at 0-0, then look to take the game to teams. I think they've been a little bit worked out. And I think when Simeone tried, I think it was beginning of last season, to change it and go kind of 4-3-3, a little bit more attacking, they got beat and they quickly then reverted back to what made them successful again, and they did well. I think then basically he's then tried... Again, it's not worked, so he's gone back to type. I think they've just been worked out. They need an injection. They need Costa. Griezmann, like you say, is he staying? Is he going? I think one way or another he's going to go. There's talk of him potentially moving in January now because obviously Costa's available and Vitolo's available from January. I think he'll go in the summer. Simeone is obviously committed to staying. He's there for the long run. They've had the move to the new stadium. I think they've got enough good players. It's just they look short of. Well, excitement is one, but they've never been exciting. But then I think it's just goals. They look like they're just struggling to get over to past teams. They're probably going to get knocked out of the Champions League, which is really kind of poor for them considering how well they've done the last few seasons. They're just having a real lull. And whether this season's just going to be one of them where they have to suck it up, make sure they get the top four, and start again next season with potentially 2 or 3 new players. I don't know. I think Simeone will stay. He's just stuck, kind of like Mourinho, really. He's really successful at one way of playing, but it's not the most attractive. And when he tries to do it, it doesn't quite work so quickly. He goes back in his shell. So that's where they're at, I think. But they got a good result the weekend, albeit really, really, really late. It would have been, I think, I read somewhere it would have been 7 draws out of 8 if they'd have drawn that. So you just need wins.
Yeah, they really do, don't they? 5 draws out of 5 draws and 6 wins. Still yet to lose, though. Bizarre, isn't it? Really strange record, that. But yes, yeah, and I'll be interested to see if they strike me as a team with that squad that are absolutely ripe for cherry picking in the summer if things don't go well. There's so many good players there, isn't there? It's just Koke, Griezmann, Saul. I think Godin maybe has got one last challenge in his leg somewhere else.
Yeah.
The goalkeeper Oblak, yeah.
Yeah.
Just so many players. But one club that maybe won't be right for anything other than Segunda Division. What has happened to both Malaga and Las Palmas, sitting bottom and second bottom of the table? I know there might not be teams that are fashionable, so to speak, but I remember Malaga being in the Champions League semi-final a few years back. Now they're bottom. And Las Palmas was so entertaining last season. This season, 5 straight defeats. They can't score goals, and it's all gone a bit wonky.
I think to take Malaga, I think they've just done the thing of selling every best player they've had for the last 3 or 4 years, and now at a point where they've just run out of players. They lost Sandro Ramirez to Everton in the summer. They've lost Pablo Fornals to Villarreal. They're just lost, I think. I think the money that they got put in when they went on that amazing run of Champions League, and they had, Cazorlas and Tulans and Van Nistelrooys and all those good players. Obviously, that was put up with not much behind it, and that quickly went. It's the same ownership, but just obviously putting zero money in, scratching around for free transfers and low kind of value signings. They're probably going to get relegated. They don't look up to much whatsoever. I think it's been coming, to be honest. You can't keep sending your best players and hardly replacing them. And that's what they've constantly been doing. For Las Palmas, I think they were so great last season under St Etienne. They just lost the magic somewhat. Obviously lost Roque Messi, who was a big player for them, lost the coach, started with a new manager who quickly left, and they've got Paco Estión in. They're in relegation form again, getting to that stage where you're probably going to go down this year at the bottom at a certain point of the season. It's a shame for them because they were one of the best teams to watch. Vitolo's gone there on loan from Atletico Madrid because obviously he can't play, £40 million player, not really done much whatsoever. Laura Remy's there, not really done much. Lost Kevin Prince Boateng, obviously. They just don't look the same, and they look ripe for relegation, to be honest.
Yeah, not good. Do want to heap some praise on Valencia and Villarreal, who both won at the weekend. Villarreal beating the aforementioned Malaga 2-0, and Valencia another 3 goals against Leganés. We've kind of covered Valencia a little bit, so credit where due, they are second. But Villarreal, unbeaten in 5, 4 wins out of the last 5.
Yeah.
Up in 5th. They are, if I'm not mistaken, also progressing in the Europa League fairly nicely. Yeah. What's been the key to that turnaround? Because they were a club that were going off the rails a bit last season. They've seemed to have spun around. And is it just Bakambu's goals, or is there a bit more to it? Yeah,
I think Bakambu's goals. Obviously, they've got Carlos Bacca now, and then you look at the rest of the players that they've got. Your Brunos, your Castillejos, Sansone. They've got enough good players, and I think they've just got a way of playing which suits them. Very similar to Atletico Madrid. Quite tight, 4-4-2. but play, kind of to the strengths. And when they've got that firepower up front, and you're quite tight at the back, you've always got a chance in games, and that's what they're doing. And they're just ticking games off, basically. So, I'm pleased for Villarreal because it's a really good little club. When you think of the size of the town, it's like 40,000 people, and how well they do, considering that is the size of the place. Practically everybody there is a season ticket holder. So they're doing really well. Obviously, like they'll get to a point when they might have to choose between finishing the top, trying to go for the top four, or potentially going down the Europa League avenue and trying to win that. Obviously, have made that decision kind of come March. They kind of did it under Marcelino and lost out on both. And I think was it the one season when they got the really hard qualifier? Did they get Monaco?
Yeah,
finished fourth.
Everton as well, wasn't it? 1 year as well. I remember them having to. Yeah.
So but I think there'll be definitely an opportunity to get in the top four. Sevilla are not doing so great. So I definitely think that fourth spot is available. But obviously Valencia are going to be in the mix.
Yeah. Praise where praise is due. I know Josh has a question. Just before I go to Josh for that question, I just want to ask you very quickly, is Zinedine Zidane under pressure as far as the Spanish press goes? Because we all saw there was an element of how good Tottenham were, but also an element of how poor Madrid were as far as the Champions League goes. Is there a bit of pressure on his head now in Spain?
Yeah, in a sense that they're 8 points behind Barcelona, who's obviously the main rival. They've just been beat kind of really publicly in the Champions League in a big game. They were not great in either game, against Spurs. And there's obviously pressure there, but there's obviously the factor that it's only November. Madrid generally peak between February to kind of May time anyway. And he's won 2 Champions Leagues in a league, and he's only been there, 2 years? So I think that taken into account, there is obviously questions being asked. There are questions being asked. I think what you've got with Real Madrid is they've had a lull. They were so good last season. They won the double. Obviously, retain the Champions League. Nobody's done that before. They then went into the summer. They beat United in the European Super Cup. They smashed Barcelona in both legs of the Spanish Super Cup. And then they kind of got to a situation when they just kind of relaxed. And I think everybody else has been at it, and they haven't. That game against Spurs highlighted a few of the deficiencies. I think more around effort than people saying, oh, Modric's legs have gone and blah, blah. It's not that. I think it was just a real lack of urgency and effort. And I think that's something that's crept into them since September onwards, basically. They're losing at home to Betis, drawing against Levante at home, and drawing against Valencia at home. There's almost been a bit of arrogance that, their individual quality that they've got will pull them out of it. But they're not doing the hard yards in terms of work rate and matching teams. And I thought they were outworked by Spurs, which was really concerning for them. They looked 3 or 4 yards off the pace, but I don't want to write it off at any point because they've got enough quality within that team to come back. Obviously, if this malaise continues, then I think Zidane might have questions to answer, but for now, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, got all the young talent, but it's a question of when that's going to kick through.
Yeah, just on that, I think they've cut themselves too short with selling players. Obviously, they let the likes of Morata go, let James go, on the pure basis that they've got these really good young kids to come through, but maybe they're just not all ready right now. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are. So I think the Ashraf, the right back against Spurs, I thought was really poor. Yeah. But he was 18, and Carvajal is obviously arguably a world-class right back. But when he's not there, I just think they've cut themselves too short with the squad and maybe put a little bit too much faith in into the youth players, which is not a bad thing, but maybe they're coming up a bit short now.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly based upon what I've seen. Okay, before we move on then, Josh, you have a quick question on VAR and Spanish use or lack of?
Yeah, absolutely. So Joel, VAR hasn't come into the 2 respective leagues that we follow. Just a question, has there now been an accelerated calling for it? Because I believe they're now bringing it in for next season. And has there been any huge decisions that have been missed?
Yeah, Spain normally has really bad refereeing decisions, and then obviously you get different sets of media saying it's a vendetta against each of the big clubs. I definitely want it in Spain. There's talk of it being trialled in the Spanish Copa del Rey last 32. And then there's also the Spanish FA want it in from the start of next season. So I think that will happen. In Spain, they've still not even got the goal line technology. So Classic Spain's obviously 2 or 3 years behind everyone else. So they're taking the opportunity to get ahead of the game and try and get VR in for the start of next season, which will help massively.
I never realised they didn't have goal line technology. I've learned something there. Genuinely didn't know that.
Because Suarez scored against Betis when they drew 0-0 last season. It was about yards over the line.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Wow. It never even crossed my mind. That's
crazy. League of that size and kind of magnitude, and they've not even got the basic goal line technology which we have here. We've had it we had it 3 or 4 years now.
Yes, isn't it even in the Championship now, or am I making that up?
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. Well, that's that then. Thank you for that, Josh. Any other business as far as La Liga goes this week, Joel? Anything else you want to bring to our listeners' attention?
No, just at the Griezmann thing. There's a lot of talk in Spain about Griezmann. Oh, sorry. There's 2 things. Yeah, Griezmann looks disinterested. Looks like he didn't really want to be there, and is talking of moving. And the second thing, just to mention, is Ronaldo's only got 1 goal this season, and I think he saw the stat this morning. He scored 1 goal from 48 shots. So he's having a bad spell, and there was images of him yesterday when he set up Isco, and it looked like Isco had missed, although Isco had scored, head down, kind of walking back to the halfway line. So all's not well with him in terms of scoring in La Liga.
Doesn't sound well. I'll tell you something else that's just broken, actually. Be interested to get your opinion. Do you remember Alvaro Arbeloa, Joel, previously of Real Madrid? Have you seen what he's tweeted this evening?
No.
Apparently, West Ham obviously confirmed the sacking of Slaven Bilic. Alvaro Arbeloa has just tweeted from his official Twitter account, "Better late than never." I think it's safe to say he wasn't a fan of Mr. Bilic. But is he still there, or did he leave?
He left.
He's
gone. He's a pundit in Spain now.
Is he really? Wow. Well, I think it's fair to say he was not a big fan. I do like it when Twitter beef goes live. It's always fun, isn't it? But yes, okay, good stuff. And I keep forgetting this. I have to ask you again. The Klassiker, first one of the season, fairly soon now.
23rd December.
Always well, yeah. Okay.
And 12 o'clock our time.
So 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a Christmas present, boys and girls.
I think got the World Club Cup.
Oh, of course, yeah. So they're going to be on hiatus for a while from La Liga, then I guess. So there you go. Okay, good stuff. Right, super. Look at the table, by the way. Barcelona and Valencia are the top 2, with Real Madrid third and Atletico fourth, with Villarreal and Sevilla in the top 6. Sociedad, Betis and Leganés just outside. And then down at the bottom, we've covered Malaga, Bosz and Las Palmas down there as well. Deportivo Alaves also struggling down in 18th place with Eibar, Deportivo La Coruña, and somewhat surprisingly, Bilbao down in 15th, also having a bit of a struggle, 3 straight defeats for them. Right, okay. Thank you very much, Joe. Good to have you back. We shall shift gears now, and we'll do a very quick whistle-stop tour of Bundesliga, and then I'm going to get Lana to fill us in on what's happened in France and Italy. So this weekend, you might know that in the Bundesliga there was Der Klassiker, which was, of course, Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Since Jupp Heynckes has come back into Bayern Munich, all has been well with the world, and that continued once again. There's been a real change around at the top of the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich are now 4 points clear of RB Leipzig, and a further 2 points ahead of Borussia Dortmund after a 3-1 victory at the Signal Iduna Park on Saturday night. Goals from Arjen Robben, beautiful flicked goal from Robben Lewandowski. Team goal from Robben, beautiful flick goal from Robert Lewandowski, albeit with a deflection, made it 2. David Alaba making it 3 on 67 before Mark Bartra getting a late consolation. Fair to say Dortmund were pretty comprehensively outplayed, although there was a good chance for Christian Pulisic at 1-0, which wasn't taken, and Bayern Munich ultimately strolling through with the victory in this particular fixture, and I think it's fair to say that all has been resumed. Bayern Munich winning games yet again. Elsewhere in the Bundesliga this weekend, notable highlights: Eintracht Frankfurt beating Werder Bremen on the Friday night fixture with a last-minute goal from one of Ross's favourites, Sebastian Aller. I'm sure you'd love him at Saints right now, Ross, but yeah, he got the last-minute winner after Rebic had put Eintracht Frankfurt in front, and Moisander had equalised for Bremen, but it is the mighty Eagles who take the points. RB Leipzig came from behind to beat the informed Hanover, who are still sitting pretty in 6th despite 3 defeats out of the last 5. Jonathan actually put Hanover in front, and to be honest, having watched this game, they were fully merited of this of the lead at that particular point, but goals from Poulsen, who landed over well from the Swedish national side, and Timo Werner. It obviously wasn't noisy or too noisy this week for Timo to pop up and get the winner with 5 minutes to go. Schalke winning away from home, don't say that very often, but Daniel Caligiuri's deflected winner against his former side, I think I'm right in saying, in Freiburg, getting the win there for the Blue Boys. Borussia Mönchengladbach and Mainz. Now the scoreline 1-1 won't particularly interest too many people in this game. Dial for Mainz equalised by Yannick Vestergaard, but there was a certain incident in this game which might have caught a few people's attention. How many of you listening to this saw this? Ross, did you see this? Did you see this particular incident?
This is the goalkeeper.
This is the goalkeeper. He goes by the name
of
Robin Zentner. If anyone hasn't seen it, would you like to describe what happened during this game when Mainz were a goal up at the time? Oh, I've lost you, Ross. I've lost you. It's all gone quiet. Shall I just queue up that and ask someone else instead?
Yeah, I think he just missed the question. A bit like the goalkeeper missed the ball. just took his eye off it.
Just took his eye off it. Okay. Josh, did you see this incident with the goalkeeper Robin Zentner? Do you want to tell our listeners what happened?
I did. A bit like Ross and his broadcasting, it took his eye off the ball on a pass back, and whilst he was looking for the defender to play it out to, the ball trickled ever so slowly back towards his goal. He took a wonderful air shot for trying to play it to his defender, looked around and went, hang on, something missing here. I had to scrabble back to retrieve the ball from almost the goal line as an on-rushing striker tried to close him down. He was very, very fortunate to not concede a goal there. But a wonderful moment.
I think the talk was, because the penalty spot is very close to where the ball sort of starts its journey backwards, and I think the talk is that the goalkeeper sort of took his peripheral vision onto the penalty spot rather than the ball, and spectacularly completely airshotted it. But it's a wonderful thing that, and a professional footballer sort of taking a foul throw in my particular highlights of a Saturday football or anytime football really. But yes, not a moment that he will live down easily. I'm sure he got plenty of ribbing from his teammates after that one, but nevertheless it didn't end up Mainz or costing Mainz, because they did get a 1-1 draw, but at the time they were of course leading the game, so luckily it didn't result in a goal. So good on Robin Zentner there. Also good on Kevin Volland, who continues his good goal scoring form for Bayer Leverkusen. He put them in front at Augsburg, but just 2 minutes later Danso got the equaliser, and Hamburg win a football match. There's an alert for you. Probably mainly as a result of a very early red card for Stuttgart. Burnich, was sent off for 2 yellow cards inside 15 minutes, and Aaron Hunt firing Hamburg in front before Ginczek equalised from the penalty spot, but goals from Kostic and Arp getting the victory for Hamburg, a much needed win that as well. And then in the Sunday games, poor old Cologne, they are having a season and a half of it, aren't they? Another defeat at home, 3-0 defeat this time to Julian Nagelsmann's Hoffenheim. Geiger and 2 goals for Sandro Wagner, who still has the most impressive moustache beard combo in world football. That was a 3-0 win for them, and a thriller on the Sunday afternoon. A late Davy Selke equaliser for Hertha BSC got them a 3-3 draw at Wolfsburg, who had led this game 2-1 and 3-1. Ibisevic put Hertha in front with Yunus Mali and Mario Gomez 2-1 up before Karen Rakik scoring the equaliser for Hertha. David. Origi, I forget his first name actually. What is his first name? Oh, I'm going to have to look this up now. Divock, that's the one, thank you. Getting the goal to put Wolfsburg in front before Davy Selke getting that late equaliser. All of that basically means Bayern Munich, as we said, are top 4 points clear of RB Leipzig, and as I said earlier, 2 points further clear of Borussia Dortmund. Schalke are making a bit of a run for the top 4. They're up in 4th. Hoffenheim and Hanover sit in 5th and 6th, with the mighty Eagles of Frankfurt in 7th, and Borussia Mönchengladbach, John will be happy to know, are climbing slowly up to 8th, Leverkusen 9th, and Augsburg in 10th. Down at the bottom, Cologne are, well, as I say, they're having a real season of it. only 2 points all season from 2 draws, no wins, minus 18 goal difference, 2 points at the bottom, with Werder Bremen equally struggling on only 5 points, with Freiburg down in 16th in the relegation playoff spot. Hamburg's win lifts them above Freiburg into 15th. Wolfsburg still looking over their shoulder. 5 successive draws. You've got to love that, haven't you? It's consistent, if nothing else. Mainz and Stuttgart also peering ominously over their shoulders. So that was the weekend that was in the Bundesliga. Ross, are you back? I just want to check you're still alive there. Are you still with us?
Should be.
There you go, superb. So yes, all I was gonna say to you was, it's the sort of mistake that maybe Fraser Forster you could see making.
Oh, absolutely. Don't give me any ideas.
I just wanted to poke the bear, that was all. But yes, interesting. If you haven't seen it, please do look it up. That's Mainz goalkeeper Robert Zender. All right, let's go over to Lana now for a little bit of Italian and French action. Right, Lana, can we start in Italy? Because I know you've got lots to talk about in France. So I want to do a little whistle-stop tour of Serie A. Josh was giving you some ribbing earlier on in the week, because he was saying that young Benevento, bless them, team of the pod, they were 66-1 to win in Juventus. They went 1-0 up, and it's fair to say you had some choice words for Josh at that point, but it ended okay in the end, didn't it?
Can I say what I wanted to tell him, or are we being,
nice? Let's be nice, but I can pretty much imagine what you said.
Whatever you say, I'm going to edit it out anyway.
It's fine. I can message you what I wanted to say, but I was being nice. It's because you always jinxed my team.
Well, we got away with it this week, but 2-1 win.
Luckily.
Happy with that, or not convinced?
We're not playing as a team, which is very frustrating considering how well Roma are playing. Like, even if they were really poor at the weekend, they're still keeping it together, which you see Juve not. It's like, I've said this before, we always start slow, blah, 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 but it's getting to a point where it's very worrying how bad we're doing, and it's like something is missing, and I can't put my finger on what it is. It's like Higuain has stepped up, finally, considering we wasted 95 million euros on him. I mean, it's just should be a given that he actually shows up. Dybala has been in a weird funk for the last month. Don't get me started on Matuidi. I am done trying to figure out what his purpose in life is. But I'm done with Juve. I can't deal with them. There's just too... I'd rather watch Roma, who I don't like, than sit through 90 minutes with Juve. It's like when we went down, and I was like, I'm going to kill Josh, first and foremost, and then I'm going to kill the Juve players. Because I was expecting them to score, and I was like, okay, we're actually going to be the team that loses to Benevento. Mostly because Josh jinxes me, and because Serie A hates us, so we have to be the team that goes and loses. But luckily, Cuadrado showed up, and Higuain showed up, and we won the game, but still, I mean, we're not playing as a team that's gone 6 league titles in a row and have been considered the best team in Italy, because we're not. In my opinion, there's at least 3 teams better than us, although the table says we're one of the best since we're second. But Napoli, even Inter, Lazio, Roma, they're all better in playing football than we are at the moment. And it just frustrates me so much how we should be doing better. We're going backwards instead of forward. And in this season, when everyone is so poor in the Champions League as well, it's like step up and actually try to win it this time. But it just feels that this is a season where we're actually going to let PSG win it. And that annoys me even more because I hate PSG.
Well, there you go. And you heard it here first. Josh is the reason that Juventus are not performing this season. So, Josh, that's on you. One thing I have to say about this game, though, the Juventus 120-year anniversary kit is quite special. Very plain and simple. Black stripes, white shorts, white socks. Did look quite nice, has to be said. So, yes, at least they got the win in that particular kit. You mentioned Roma. We should just touch on their game with Fiorentina. Cracker, this one. 4-2 victory for Roma. 2 goals for young Gerson in this game as well. Goal for Simeone's son as well for Fiorentina, along with Jordan Veretout, who you'll know well. And Manolas and Perotti getting the goals that won the game in the end, 4-2. Roma quietly, quite nice run, isn't it? 4 straight wins, up to 5th in the table. Been impressed with Roma so far?
Yeah, I mean, they're, 4 points behind us? And they're basically doing their own thing, quietly moving up the table. No one is noticing because everyone's so focused on Napoli, Inter, Lazio, Juve. And it's sort of good for Roma not having that pressure to perform because they do it in their own pace and they're not, as you see, slowly climbing up the table. Obviously, they're not going to win the Scudetto, but getting up to top, getting up to Champions League spot is their main goal. And they've done it well in the Champions League as well. They beat Chelsea 3-0, crushed them. Could have, scored even more, considering how comical the defending from Chelsea was. But overall, I've been impressed with them for the last couple of weeks. So I hope that they keep it up, especially in the Champions League. I mean, I'm not having any high hopes when it comes to Juve, so at least I hope one Italian team does well. So It just remains to be seen.
Got to keep the focus on what you can have as far as positives for Roma. But and Lazio also on a bit of a stomp. 5 straight victories for them. Their game was postponed with Udinese this weekend. I have to confess, I didn't see why that was. Was this a weather issue or was this something I didn't pick up on here?
Me neither. I heard it was weather issued, or maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the pictures now, and it actually is quite obvious now. It was quite wet over at the Stadio Olimpico. Yeah, it was. The ball wasn't rolling, and I'm just looking at pictures here. The referee dropping the ball, and it just splashes in the puddles. So that was why that game did not go ahead. But
and they can go second if they win.
They can,
because they're on 28 points, and they can get third, level on points with Juve.
They're on an absolute charge at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lazio have been doing really well. They won against Nice in Europe as well, although it was to an own goal, but still they're in a great form. So we'll see how that goes. I think Udinese should be a good game whenever that game is. And then, of course, it's the huge game. Saturday after the international break, they play the Derby against Roma away.
Yeah.
So that's a great game. That should be their, I wouldn't say first big test because they played Juve, but it's a testament to how far they've come and if they can keep it up or if it's just a fluke.
Yeah, especially against their biggest rivals. It's going to be a massive game, that one. And there was another massive game for, Milan manager Vincenzo Montella, who took his Milan side away in the final game of the weekend to Sassuolo. Rumour has it that if he hadn't won this game, he would have been fired. He did win the game. Does still feel a little bit like a matter of time, but goals from Romagnoli and Suso getting the victory. Milan, that puts them 7th, but they are quite a way off even the top 4, 9 points off the top 4. Is it a question of time for Montella, or has he got enough chance to put this right still, do you think?
It depends, because now there's serious talks about Milan targeting Conte for next season to bring him in the summer. So if I was Milan, I would, stay with Montella. It wouldn't make sense to fire him and then bring someone in temporarily. I don't think anyone would want that job. So it would make sense to keep him out unless Conte actually gets fired during Christmas and comes and takes over. But their main target for the summer is hiring him then. So I think it makes sense to just keep Montella until then. Because, who would want to come in for 6 months and coach this Milan team with so much pressure that comes with the job? You have fans who are so pissed off. They're not happy with the performance of the players, especially Bonucci, since so much money was invested in signing him. And they were also excited that they actually signed a player from such a huge rival. And he's been the one that's underperformed the most. Like, he's been at fault for so many of their losses, the goals he's conceded. And at a time when it's such a new team, you need leaders to step up. You would expect Bonucci to do that, but he didn't. So I think it's not just solely down to Montella, but it's also the players having to look at themselves and be like, okay, we play for one of the biggest clubs in the world. Historically, they've always been successful. Now it's time to step up and, target a potential top 4-5 finish. I mean, I doubt they're going to get the Champions League unless it's a glorious collapse from the likes of Inter, Lazio, Roma, even Sampdoria. So for me, I would be targeting Europe, and then when the summer comes, you bring in Conte, who is well known to, start at the back, build from the defense forward, and he would know how to build that team, which players to build it around, because I don't think Montella is tactically smart enough or, to put in that philosophy of building a team and putting his own imprint on it. It's just basically going game by game.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. I think, as you say, it seems like a project that may be just a bit beyond a manager of that experience. And when you've got, Inter drew this weekend with Torino in a 1-1 draw on the early Sunday game, and Napoli, rather surprisingly, dropping points this weekend away at Chievo. But when you've got clubs of that size sort of having such good seasons, it puts the pressure on Milan even more. And to get an outside perspective, Ross, you watched Milan on a rare European outing for you against AEK Athens, I think it was in midweek.
Yeah.
What was your sort of views on them as a complete neutral?
Well, I was looking forward to watching them because I have to watch my football now via the BT Sports Showcase channel because my internet's so poor that I can't watch sport on my laptop on my PC. So it was nice to be able to get the chance to watch AC Milan this week, and I was looking forward to it because obviously on paper they've had such a good summer in terms of the transfers, and there's been a lot of talk about how they're going to do this season and this sort of thing. So I was really looking forward to seeing them, and I watched them play against Athens, and Athens not so much outplayed them but completely controlled it. They were so comfortable in that fixture. It was a shock because the last time I really saw AC Milan, they were free flowing. They were near the top of the league. They were really, really impressive to watch, and they were the AC Milan that you think of when you see the black and white stripes. But the team I saw in midweek, the analogy I would use, it looks like someone's doing a Rubik's Cube, but they haven't got the corners lined up yet. Because you can see something there, but it just seems off. And like Lana was saying there, Bonucci, the commentator said that AC Milan have managed to make him look human. And I think that sums up his performances so far this season, going by what Lana's just said. He seems just off. They all do. It just seems like the balance isn't right. And to me, it looks like a project that's still in development, but I was quite surprised that a side that had spent the money they had and brought in the talent that they had showed very little of it in that game.
Yeah, I think you made some good points there. And in the day, a club of that stature, you just expect to be better. And some of the signings in the summer, not sure I'm completely on board with, but we shall see. There is early days, and I do agree with you, Lon. I think Conte is probably going to be the next big manager to move on potentially at the end of the season, and Milan seems like a good destination for him. The only other game I wanted to touch on was the Derby della Lanterna, which I watched on Saturday night. This cost the Genoa manager, his name's escaped me, I'll have to look this up, cost him his job. I think it's Strinic, I think, from memory, was the name of the manager. I think it is anyway. But it cost him his job, and Sampdoria continuing to impress. Gaston Ramirez, Ross, you'll remember him well, with his first goal in Samp colours, followed by the Quagliarella, with an 84th minute winner after he'd been crudely dispatched by a bad tackle in the game, but he fought on and got the second goal late on. But yes, good result this for Samp. Genoa really are struggling down in 18th position. What do you make of Samp, what you may have seen of them later this season? Young players, sort of reborn almost, and they're having an awesome season, up in 6th in Serie A at the moment.
Yeah, they're having a great season. It's good to see Quagliarella doing so well. I mean, obviously he's a former Juve player, not so successful, but he won the league with us. But they're having a great season, especially Gaston Ramirez as well. And I think, as you said, they're 6th on the table, ahead of Milan, a few points behind Roma. And if they can keep it up, maybe they can be, Atalanta of last season, who went into Europe, and just be the surprise team of the year. Obviously, we would say Lazio is this season, but Sampdoria has been doing well. After they've had a few results go against them, but I've been impressed, and I'm really enjoying this season because there's so many teams putting up a fight and actually performing. Not much like, if you've seen on the previous season, it's basically been Juve dominated, and then it's been between Napoli and Roma. But this season, everyone's invested wisely. Obviously not every team, but the mid-table teams have, and it will be fun going forward to see how the table ends at the end of the season. Because I genuinely think Sampdoria might get a European spot if they could keep up their performance.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, they've been really good, and some of those young players. That lad that scored the free kick from 40 odd yards last season, was it? Is it Moreira or Torreira? Sorry, the Uruguayan. There's a lot of teams in Europe looking at him. Also looking at Dennis Praet, who was at Anderlecht, I think I'm right saying before. Linetti, Juricic. There's a few players that are being looked at all across Europe. And
yeah, Arsenal's been linked to Lucas Torreira.
Ah, well, that won't happen then.
No.
Good times.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that. We're more likely to get Quagliarella than we are to get Torreira. But yeah, nevertheless, some good players performing well there. All that basically means at the end of the weekend, Napoli are still top just about, despite dropping points, as I say, surprisingly, at 0-0 draw at Chievo. They are top 1 point clear of Juve and a further 1 point clear ahead, even further off Inter. In third, Lazio, Roma and Samp, as we said, making up the top 6 of Milan, Torino, Fiorentina and Atalanta down to 10th, with Benevento still pointless, sadly, down at the bottom. Hellas Verona also struggling on 6 points, as are Genoa on 6 points. And Sassuolo just above the relegation zone, as are Spal, Crotone and Cagliari, with Udinese, Bologna and Chievo kind of making up the numbers in mid-table. And as you say, Lana, the Rhone Derby is probably the fixture to look out for when we return after the international break in 2 weeks'
There's some good
time.
games coming up. On Saturday, it's Roma Lazio at 5 o'clock UK time.
Yes.
And then it's Napoli playing home to Milan at 7:45. Look, I'm saying English times because I'm being considerate.
Bless you.
Sampdoria are hosting Juve at 2 o'clock.
Wow.
And then it's Inter Atalanta at 7:45 Sunday. Juve Inter playing on Sunday.
Good stuff.
So,
good stuff.
yeah, it's a few good games coming up. I think it will be interesting, especially Inter and Atalanta and Sampdoria and Juve.
Got an excellent question actually on Serie A in a minute, which I want to bring Joel in on as well. So we'll save that for the final question section in a momento. Just to confirm, by the way, Genoa's coach was indeed Ivan Juric, who got the bullet after the Derby della Lanterna defeat. Right, speaking of bullets, let's fire over to France for our final section of this week's podcast before this lovely international break kicks in again. We can start only one place, Lana.
We're not covering the other games, or do we have to?
All right. Well, I'll maybe run us through the other games, but let's hear your thoughts on the Rhone Derby, which for those of you living under a rock, it is St Etienne against Lyon. It's the biggest derby in France, despite what people think of Marseille PSG. This is the game everyone looks forward to, and a certain Nabil Fekir caused a bit of a storm in this game, but it was more of a storm from Lyon as they eventually won the game 5-0. It was a battering for Oscar Garcia's men. Go for gold. What did you think of it? What went on, of course, because some of our listeners who maybe don't watch the French league wouldn't have seen what happened before and just before the end of the game. Lots of scenes. What happened, and what did you think of the game?
It was a great game. Well, we could cover that later. The whole thing started off with the game being postponed 7 minutes due to smoke, and it was just too foggy for the players to even see the ball. And when it finally kicked off, St Etienne failed to clear a corner, which led to Fekir passing the ball through the St Etienne midfield. It was just such a great pass, cutting through to Memphis Depay, who's been in great form for the past few weeks, making it 1-0. And from then on, it was just a matter of trying to defend for your life. Hamouma went off with an injury just right away after that. and Söderlund, who scored the winning goal last season, came on. And then Fekir scored 25 minutes or so into the game. From then on, it was just a matter of bringing on defensive players for St Etienne, with Florence both coming on. And then briefly after that, Léo Lacroix was sent off for a very nasty challenge on Fekir that could have ended really badly. I had flashbacks to the Portugal game in 2015, and I think probably most Lyon fans were like having a semi-heart attack when he went down because he was in a lot of pain. But thankfully, he popped up and the game continued. But for a moment there, I was about to cry, and I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to suffer through another injury as well with this guy. But thank you, Lord. I prayed so much that night that he was fit. Then Mariano scored, Traore scored, and then Fekir scored the 5th goal. And after that, he took off his T-shirt and did the Messi celebration. I know some Ronaldo fanboys will be like, yeah, but it was a Ronaldo celebration. But in fact, it was the Messi celebration. He did it in front of the St Etienne fans, causing a pitch invasion, which led to the police escorting the Lyon players into the locker room because it got too hostile. And the game was called off for 30 minutes. And there were talks about whether it would even go on. And some were worried that the victory would, automatically be awarded to St Etienne because of it. But after a lot of back and forth, it was decided that they would come on and play the remaining 6 minutes, which Lyon actually could have added a 6th goal. But Torban, he called it off in the 88th minute, which was like, okay, why did you even start the game to begin with? But all in all, it was a historical win for Lyon. It was their biggest victory away at the rivals' stadium. So I was really happy. Obviously, Fekir was subbed off after the game was resumed again, and Jordan Ferry came on because I don't think Fekir would have lasted if he had stayed on. I'm pretty sure that every St Etienne player was out to take him. So thankfully, that was a smart choice, and Jordan Ferry was brought on in his place. I think that I want to give a really huge shout out to Hussam Aouar, who had a really good game. He's another French midfielder coming through the Lyon Academy. I think he's like only 19. Yeah, only 19. Him and Lucas Sart had a really good game, especially Aouar, because he was so good. His pass to Tete for the 3rd goal, you have to see, because it's like he's so smart, so brilliant for his young age, and he's going to go places because he started off at the season coming in as a substitute, and now he's being trusted in the most important and biggest game of the season for Lyon. And I think going forward, he's going to be an automatic starter against, next to Lucas Sart and probably Ndombele as well. It depends what kind of formation Lyon play. But they played a 4-2-3-1. And it's worked so well because they scored 32 goals in 12 games. And they're just keeping clean sheets as well, which is so unlikely for Lyon. But there's not enough words to explain just how proud I am of this performance. And this was such a huge test, and I think they might finish second. It was a vintage Lyon performance, and it was a reminder of the season where they almost won the league, but because of Lacazette got injured, they finished second. I think it was like 3 seasons ago, and it's a reminder of that season. So hopefully going forward, they will keep up the same consistent performance and keeping clean sheets and just staying injury fit. That's the main priority.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's, as you say, it's keeping the players fit, and still sort of question marks over Bruno Genesio, who's quite critical of Fekir, saying that he disrespected, that you have to respect the situation. I think he described, and I loved it personally. It's a very classic thing to do, and he really is at the very top of his form. And I've caught up on this game.
I get the criticism, I do, because it's in such a hostile environment,
yeah.
And I think he was more worried about his safety than anything else. I think had it been against any other team, he wouldn't even say anything. He wouldn't even bat the eye. But it could have ended so ugly if any of those supporters had been able to attack him.
Yeah,
they were out. Yeah, they were out for blood.
Yeah.
But Aulas went out today and was like, "Oh, Fekir, I salute him. He's a hero." Like, he was just like taking the piss.
It's unlike Jean-Michel Aulas to get involved in controversy, isn't it? Of course not. I mean, I'd say I caught up on this game today, and Lyon really did impress me. I absolutely adore Aouar and Lucas Toussaint. The two players I just love watching, as well as Fekir, obviously. But everyone knows my love for him. But it just all at the moment seems to be clicking again after a few patchy results. What a good way, especially after the qualification in the Europa League as well. Lyon could be on for a very, very good season, which I know will please quite a few people, you included. So that was the big game of the weekend. We also saw Marcelo Bielsa ease the pressure on himself after Lille got a 3-0 victory away at Metz in the battle of the bottom two at the time. Goals from Nicolas Pepe twice, one for the penalty spot and Baloui with the other. So that eases the pressure on El Loco. But let's be honest, it was a game that really they should be looking to win and did. We also saw PSG win. That's not a big surprise. We actually saw Monaco and PSG kind of go goal crazy. PSG scored 5 at Angers on the Saturday afternoon game. A couple for Mbappe, a couple for Cavalli, one for Draxler in that game. And Monaco went one better and got 6 at home to Guingamp on Saturday evening. Guido Carrillo with 2 there. Adama Traore with 2. Keita Balde and Fabinho from the penalty spot. So 6-0 thrashing for Guingamp there. Rennes also somewhat surprisingly got a 1-0 victory over Bordeaux, and the unfortunate Jeremy Toulon putting through his own net on the Friday night fixture. Bordeaux largely falling down the table at an alarming rate. That's 4 defeats in the last 5 for that side, so not looking so good. Amiens drew away at Montpellier. I think that's probably a good result for them, good point for them. Giovanni Sio putting Montpellier in front before Danilo Avelar getting the last-minute equaliser for Amiens. Claudio Ranieri's travelling band of men they get back to winning ways this weekend. 2-1 victory over Toulouse, whose form continues to be somewhat alarming. They continue to fall down the table. A goal for Thomason for Nantes, equalised by Blin, and Emiliano Sala getting the victory goal for Nantes there. Antoine also picking up another valuable 3 points for them, catapulting them up to 11th in the table, 3-0 over Strasbourg, thanks in no small part to Nuno da Costa sending off Strasbourg. And then goals for Sokyung Jun, Kaloui and Nian for Troyes getting the victory there. And Nice, why always him? Well, pretty simple. Mario Balotelli scored the winner in the 40th minute from the penalty spot, and then Julie got himself sent off in the 89th minute. Standard Mario Balotelli behaviour.
No, that was, I need to jump in and defend him because that was not a red card at all. It wasn't even a yellow. That was so harshly sent off. And if they don't get that overruled, then someone needs to look at the referee level in France. We all know it's crap, but this was like over the line. It
was a classic case of player's reputation before incident, wasn't it? It's like referee looked and thought, it's Balotelli, I have to send him off. And really, I agree with you. I don't think it was even a yellow, but nevertheless, you think that will get looked at again. But it is just classic Mario Balotelli, isn't it? Just never a quiet, dull moment for him. But a good win that for Nice, that much needed as well. First win in 5 for them. And Marseille also went goal crazy. Goals galore in France this weekend. 5 for Marseille. Luis Gustavo, Florian Thauvin, Morgan Sanson, Kostas Mitroglou, remember him, Ross? Probably not. And a late second for Thauvin, sealing a 5-0 victory over Caen, who rather surprisingly dumped their 5-0 after they were sitting in 7th, but 3 defeats in the last 5. Leaves them a little bit struggling. So that was the weekend that was in Liga. PSG have extended their lead. Well, I say extended, they've maintained the lead, I should say, 4 points over Monaco, with both teams winning. 32 points for PSG, 28 for Monaco. Lyon now up to 3rd. 4 straight wins for Genesius men. Marseille also on a decent run, unbeaten in 5. 2 straight wins for them, up to 4th. Nantes in 5th. St Etienne, despite the heavy defeats, sits 6th, with Caen, Montpellier, Bordeaux and Rennes down to 10th, with Troyes, Toulouse, Guingamp and Angers down to 14th. Nice, with their victory, going up to 15th, their first win in 5. With Dijon, Amiens struggling just above the relegation zone, which sees Strasbourg sit in the playoff spot, or promotion playoff spot. And Lille and Metz continue to occupy the bottom 2 spots. It's looking very grim for Metz, just 3 points for their 12 games played. Lille, should be said, also have a game in hand, so they could actually get out of that relegation spot if they were to win it. So that was the weekend that was in Liga, and so draws a close to our European roundup for another week. I thought we'd go a little bit longer this week, seeing as we've got such a long international break. Thought we'd give you plenty to chew over during that break of time. We have just got time for 2 quick other notable league, or 1 game, and some league system playoffs. MLS is in its playoff system. Again, if you haven't already read it, please do check out Jimmy and Pat's excellent work on our website if you want your guide to the playoffs. But we know who our semi-finalists will be. Columbus Crew just about hanging on to their victory over New York City FC, which was a game that saw Andrea Pirlo finally hang up his boots after the defeat. New York City FC trailed 4-1 from the first leg, but they won 2-0. In the second leg, they had loads of chances to get this back, but they couldn't do it, despite David Villa and Struder's goal. So they went out 4-3 on aggregate to Columbus Crew. Houston Dynamo also progressed after a 0-0 at home to Portland. So they got the job done away from home and dumped out the former MLS Cup champions. They went behind to Asprilla, but Remick and Manitas with the late winner for the Dynamo, who's, despite having been once managed by the late or the great Owen Coyle, they have turned things around big style, and they will go into the playoff system. They're a bit of a dark horse, actually, under their new coach, Cabrera, the Colombian Wilmer Cabrera, that is. So good result for them. And also they'll be joined by Toronto, who went through on away goals after a 1-0 defeat at home to New York Red Bulls. Bradley White-Phillips getting the goal in a game that saw Sasha Kleshin and Jose Altidore square up and both be sent off. But Toronto it is who progress, with Giovinco and all. And the Seattle Sounders, the reigning MLS Cup champions, did what they needed to do after a 0-0 draw away in Canada at Vancouver. In the opening leg, they got the 2-0 victory they needed at home, with both goals coming from one Clint Dempsey. And all that means Columbus Crew will now entertain Toronto on Wednesday the 22nd of November, whilst the Houston Dynamo will host Seattle Sounders on the same night, followed up with the second legs, obviously reverses, on the Thursday and Friday of the same week. And after that, we are planning on doing a little podcast special with Jimmy and Pat to discuss the season that was in MLS. So that's where we are stateside. And finally, before we go to some listener questions to finish, the Argentine Premier Division is underway, or the Superliga, as it should now be affectionately known. And some of our listeners might be familiar with Boca Juniors and River Plate and their historic rivalry, the Super Classico. That was played this weekend, and it was a win for Boca, who've had a fantastic start to their season. They have played 8, won 8, goal difference of plus 19, 24 points, and they beat their bitter rivals by 2-1. Anybody want to hazard a guess how many cards were shown in this game?
7.
19.
Not quite,
8.
but somewhere in between. I'll tally them up for you. For
5.
River Plate, we had Lux, Pinola, Medina, Casco, Perez and De La Cruz booked and Fernandez sent off. So if you're keeping track, that's 7. And we also had for Boca Juniors, Perez booked, that's 8. Cardona sent off, that's 9. 10, Nandez booked. Benedetto, 11 booked. Pavon, 12 82nd minute booking as well. So 12 cards in total, 2 red cards. You've got to love that, haven't you? But the
Just
goal
a
from
normal game then.
just a normal game, yeah. Cardona actually put Boca in front before Poncio equalised for River Plate, but Nunez with the late winner sees the result go Boca Juniors' way. So that is the Super Classico in Argentina. Right, okay, that is that for our fantastic run across Europe this week. We should just say, Lana, I'm just going to give you the honour of this. Just before we take listeners' questions, there was one other incident which wasn't, well, it was in France, technically. Well, actually, it was technically in Portugal, but it affected Marseille. And there's a player I know that you have a real affection for in Patrice Evra. I know you're a big fan. There was a little message. If you haven't seen this, he kicked out a supporter in Belenenses in the Europa League in midweek. The Marseille fans provided a rather nice kind of tifo or banner to welcome him back for the home game. Do you want to? I'm sure you very happily enunciate what was said on this banner. Would you like to tell our listeners how he was greeted when he returned to the home stadium at the Velodrome at the weekend?
Well, he was told to nicely fuck off.
That's fine. It's a quote. You can say it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, they basically said that you don't respect the shirt. Fuck off. Yeah. Because the reason he was suspended due to the fact that he kicked a Marseille fan, went all Cantona on him, because the Marseille fan said, "You're shit. Get out of my club."
Fun fact for you: Eric Cantona did that on my birthday in 1995. I think it was January 25th at Selhurst Park, Crystal Palace.
You're old.
Yes, I am. Thanks for reminding me. That's very great. This will be Lana's last appearance on the podcast, boys and girls. So I'd like to thank her for her time. Like we can.
They'll make a petition to get me back.
Nobody's going to vote. Right, let's finish with some listener questions then, and we'll try and get one in for you all. So, Josh, what have we got? If there's a couple that are specific to leagues, you can try and squeeze them across to Joel and Ross as well, if you can make them work that way.
Well, the first one I think we'll go is from...
Hang on. Hold that thought, Josh. You've gone all Dalek on us.
Oh my God.
Whilst you unplug and plug yourself back in, I know which one you're going to go with first, so I shall dig this one for you. It's our good friend Pete Kennelly over in sunny Australia. Hello, Pete. He wants to know, and I'm going to bring Joel in on this one as well, because there's a sub-question here. Lana, he wants to know, has the swagger returned to Serie A, in your opinion?
Of course it has. I mean, everyone's finally watching Serie A this season. So I think it's, on the way up. But it's obviously going to take a time before it gets back up. But it's definitely hip to watch Serie A these days. Because everyone likes to, play experts of a certain league or a certain team or player. Which we've seen with Fekir since yesterday. Suddenly, all these French experts have popped up on my timeline.
Funny
so, yeah, I know. I think that the interest is back. I wouldn't say it was lost, but I think people are more interested in watching the league now, considering it's more competitive than it has been for the last 6 years. As we mentioned earlier, teams have invested and are genuinely, putting up a fight for whether it's the title, a Champions League spot, or a European spot, or just avoiding relegation. As we saw with Benevento, they really put up a fight against Juve. And I wouldn't say we've seen that earlier in the past. Teams have just usually rolled over and let Juve score left and right, or Napoli. So it's fun to see how competitive the league has been this season, and I hope that it continues to be competitive, because every Serie A fan wants to see Serie A back to the glory days. And I know we're far from reaching that point, but it's the start, especially this season. So hopefully it will continue to grow and become an interesting league for other people to watch.
Yeah, well said. The title race definitely has captured everyone's attention, but I want to bring Joel in quickly on this question as well from a slightly different angle. Joel, I think for technical and ability, technical ability, and for that alone, I think La Liga, it's fair to say, is the highest rated league in the world, and certainly one of the top three, if you will, if you look at the big five. Has interest from a viewing standpoint declined in La Liga this season in terms of when you see the big three? I wouldn't say struggling, because Barca are clearly still very good, Real Madrid are clearly still very good, but it just feels like it hasn't been I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. It just doesn't quite feel like the two superpowers are at their peak, and obviously with Atletico struggling as well. Has that been noticeable in affecting either the viewing figures or the general interest from people from what you've seen?
I think it's a fair point, because what everybody wants is kind of the big three inverted commas going for the league. It'll end up being Barcelona and Real Madrid going for it, but I don't think you can write Valencia off. So although you've lost the big three kind of being there and dominating and being within a point of each other as it stands, you've also got the kind of amazing story of Valencia, which is bringing real interest. Everybody thinks another week goes by, they're going to lose, but they're not. And they're winning and they're winning and they're winning and they're playing well and they're keeping clean sheets and scoring goals. So I think from an interest point of view, weirdly, it might add more interest to it, because I remember the season when Atletico won it, that made people sit up and realise that the league's stronger than people thought. And people still say it's a two-horse race in that league, because I struggle with that, because when Atletico would have won it in the last 3 years, and then they've also got to 2 Champions League finals, I do struggle with that. That's a two-horse race in that league. But I think Valencia's story is definitely kind of pricking people's interest in it, and will make it all the more exciting, I think. And I think what that will also do is raise the spectacle of the league, but it will also give other teams hope that it's not as unattainable to get where they've got as quickly as they've got, if that makes sense. They've got a decent coach. Granted, they had really good players already, but it's not like they've gone and spent 400 million euros or pounds to get to that situation. So that then makes it a bit more attainable, which makes it more interesting. And I think what we will see is teams maybe speculating a little bit more now to try and break into that top 4, because it did seem like a closed shop, and clearly it's not.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I must admit, the games, because you know me, I'll watch any football, I don't care where it's from or what division, but the games I've watched in Spain this year have been more the Sunday morning games when I've not had football, or the games against the sides on the Friday evening that have been, or the Monday evening that have just not been the big clubs, as it were. So I've kind of enjoyed watching the mid-table sides, and that sort of bleeds into another question, which I'm actually going to pick on Ross for, just because it's a interesting one I'd like to get his opinion on. This is from our good friend PG Nez, who's a good friend of ours from the French football perspective, and he wants to know, why do people call Liga a farmers' league? I'm sure the majority of players haven't visited a farm, let alone driven a tractor. You follow it aside with the Tractor Boys in it, or a league, sorry, the Tractor Boys in it in Ipswich. But why do you think that the Championship's a good barometer to kind of almost compare to Liga, in that it's not popular, but it is high quality, isn't it? You look at some of the teams that are in there, some of the performances that have gone on. The viewing figures are up in both the Championship and Liga this season. So, do you think it's a good comparison when you look at the two leagues together?
I've compared them before. I think it's one of the reasons I fell for Liga was because it reminded me so much of the Championship in terms of not just the quality that's in it. I wouldn't say they're at the same level, but I get the same feeling from those clubs, in that they are clubs that are developing talent and coaching them into improving, because there are heavyweights in their divisions that they have to compete with if they want to be achieving, some of the things they want to achieve, like the cups, like the European places, like the league title. There's clearly a gulf in quality between Liga and the Championship, but the thing that drew me to both of them was the scale of the competition that's in both of them, because you can't really guarantee many results per weekend. I know you've got your PSGs, who at the moment are just racing through teams, and last season you had Monaco doing the same, but there's teams in that league, like mid-table lower, you can't ever really bank on any of them winning, and there's usually a shock result somewhere in Liga. So I think they're comparable in terms of the competition, in terms of the quality that's in there. I think the Championship has a better spread. I think it's a more even league. But I think Liga, you can't throw an entire division under the bus just because it's not got as many star players as Spain or Italy. What Liga does very well is develop talent, and I think anyone that's ever listened to me before knows that I love the stories in football, and seeing some of the players that have come through in Liga and gone on to not even win the league with Liga, but then to go on to England, to Spain, to wherever and develop themselves there. I think it's a very good league to if you're interested in watching talent develop. I think Liga is an excellent league to go and watch.
Yeah, me too. PG also says Koscielny is from a rural area of France, so it's possible he's driven a tractor or maybe milked a cow, which is perfectly possible, actually. I do remember a story about Laurent Koscielny. He funded, I think it was an accordion factory. Chime in at home if you think I'm wrong, but I'm sure he paid a significant amount of money to keep an accordion factory going because they were going out of business. And it was from the town of his birth, and I'm sure he paid a lot of money to keep this business in production. I'm frantically going to try and Google that story, but I'm almost positive that that's what happened. So yes, there you go. If I get the answer,
it is a true story.
It is a true. I've just found it now. Actually, yeah, donated 600,000 to save an accordion factory.
Yeah, because he's born in what's it called?
Is it Mogier? Mogienne? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm sure it's Montjean Accordion Factory in Tula.
Yeah.
Tula. Yeah.
Because Tula in Norwegian means to joke.
There you go.
So.
How ironic that he plays for Arsenal. Let's move on quickly. But yes, it's little stories like that make your heart warm.
Keep digging yourself.
Oh,
we dig our
own selves. Honestly, we dig our own selves. Quick side question, another one for Joel. Joel, are you having this Spain World Cup '94 throwback kit? Are you having that? I don't mind the design, but what's with the shorts and socks being different colours? I'm not keen on that. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I thought it looked all right.
Yeah.
I seen it's like a theme now, isn't it? Going back to '90s kits.
Yeah, Colombia have done the same. Mexico done the same.
Maybe a trend,
Germany.
a trend that they're all going to follow, I think, for the World Cup.
Do you know who that kit reminds me of? And I hope to God I think you're roughly the same age as me. Do you remember Jose Luis Caminero?
Yeah. He was manager of. Let me Google it. Caminero. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Good, wasn't he?
Yes, Caminero. He scored a goal at the USA '94, and I just remember absolutely loving how he played. I just remember being a real fan of how he played the game, and yeah, that kit just brings back either that or the Euro '96 penalty shootout at England. That's the kits. Who was it who managed? Have you found it? Who was it? Who managed?
I'm just looking now. Maybe he didn't. I'm sure. I remember him being a manager.
Yeah, because I remember him being, I don't know whether it was a pundit or whether it was something to do with Spanish football, but sort of recently I remember his name coming up. But he's 49 now. Wow.
He's director of football at Atletico Madrid. I knew he was involved somewhere.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. Played for Real Madrid B, Valladolid, Atletico Madrid, and Valladolid. Played for Spain 21 times, scoring 8 goals. So there you go. But yeah, that's good times. Okay, I think we've got time for one last question, seeing as we've gone over the 2-hour mark. Josh, you can have this final one if you're not Daleking. Say something, let's check.
We shall see.
Good stuff, you're back. Fantastic.
So,
last question.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Yes, from Harry Hainstock. With David Moyes set to take over at West Ham, is the bottom 3 of the Premier League decided already?
Wow. I don't think Palace are going to go. Do you? I don't. I don't know
Hope
why.
so.
You get all of our Palace. There must be hundreds of Palace fans turning off right now, going right. That's it.
Don't care. They live in Croydon. That's a bad enough punishment for them as it is.
You give your thoughts, and I'll get Ross's thoughts because I think there's 2 clubs worse than Palace at the moment.
If Wilfried Zaha stays fit, begrudgingly they'll stay up.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. All of their success rides on that. But yeah, I don't think they'll finish bottom, but I also hope they go down.
So are you joining Harry in saying that West Ham are going to be fit for the drop, or you think they'll be all right if they get a new manager?
depends which one, doesn't it? And it is that David Moyes question. What's he going to do? It's like last chance saloon for him. There's always one team that is quote unquote too good to go down, and maybe it's West Ham.
Yeah, I think Liverpool have enough to stay up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is very, very tight, but I think West Ham do have that hallmark of being too big to go down, and you know what happens when people start saying that. They are the team that will go.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask Ross to finish us off then, Ross, if you pardon the turn of phrase. For me, it's actually 3 clubs I'm looking at with interested eyes. Southampton is not one of them, you'd be happy to know.
It should be, but carry on.
Probably should be, yeah. I do think, actually, maybe even 4 sides. I think the promoted sides you can't say are safe now. I know Brighton and Huddersfield and Newcastle have done brilliantly, but I still think that the former 2 will drop away. Brighton and Huddersfield will drop. But the 3 I'm really looking at are Stoke, West Brom and Swansea. I think Paul Clement is on borrowed time at Swansea, and I think putting all your eggs in a 20-year-old Tammy Abraham basket is risky at best. I think the signings they've made have been poor. And I look at West Brom just because I've kept saying it on this podcast ever since we've done it, that one day they're going to go. And I just wonder if the tide is starting to turn against Tony Pulis there. And Stoke, I just don't rate Mark Hughes as a manager. I just never have. I never will. And I think he's got very lucky recently with that win at Watford, for example, the point at home this weekend. Stoke, for me, are a side that are just sleepwalking to the Championship. So do you agree with any of those 3 and the promoted sides, maybe? Or do you think there's a bigger side other than Southampton, maybe, that could drop down?
I think Southampton are a genuine possibility. I know I'm a fan, so maybe I'm too close to it to see the wood from the trees, but I think Southampton are a genuine possibility given how we've started and the run we've got coming up. I think by December we could be in that area where people like yourself will be saying, well, Southampton, they could be in and around. I think we've got a very good chance of being in it. Swansea, I think, are my favourites for the drop. I don't like the look of them. I don't think they've done enough. It's very strange to see Wilfred Bronny go back there and still not get a kick. Crystal Palace, I think Crystal Palace will go at this point anyway, because even though, yes, the performances have improved, they are still on 4 points. And you can play the best football in the world. If you don't get any points on the board, then you're no use. So Crystal Palace, I still think, are favourites for it as well. The third slot, I think, is a bit tougher because, like you say, there's so many sides in and around it now that could go. I don't think Everton will. I think they'll get someone in that can do the job. I think if West Brom stick with Tony Pulis, he'll keep them up. If they sack him, then they'll be in trouble. Bournemouth, I don't think, will be in there. West Ham, the David Moyes factor is very volatile because he could be like he was at Everton, or he could be like he was at Real Sociedad and Sunderland. Leicester, I don't think, will be in trouble. And then you've got the 3 promoted teams, and I still think Brighton. I like the look of Brighton so far. 11 games in, they've done a lot better than I thought they would, but I still don't think they've got enough. I still think they're very, very Championship. It would surprise me to see them stay up. But then Huddersfield, they remind me a lot of when Blackpool came up and they burned out quite quickly because they had that fantastic start. They were up in about 8th or something silly, and then end of the season they just completely fell out the bottom. So I don't know. Difficult to call my bottom 3 decisively, but Swansea and Palace I think are probably favourites for it, and then the third slot could be anyone from about 8th place down at the moment.
Okay,
can I throw Bournemouth into the mix?
Yeah,
they've
brought in the entire bottom end of the table. Then
let's put it this way: they had a problem scoring goals last season, and they've brought in Jermaine Defoe, who scores goals, but he's only scored 1 this season. And
they're not playing him, are they?
Exactly. It's a very, very odd issue they got there. Their top scorer is Josh King and Andrew Sermon, so that's not a very good sign for a team that wants to stay in the division.
No.
I think it could be the time for him to, for Eddie Howe to. I don't think they'll sack him, but
no.
I think it is close to that.
I don't think he'll go because he went to Burnley and he missed home too much.
Yeah,
so
true.
If he goes, he'd either need to be sacked, or he'd need to get a Southampton job or a Brighton job somewhere along the coast because he hated it in Burnley. He came back as soon as he had the opportunity. So
I'm not going to say anything about the north of England with Joel on the pod.
Well, he can always manage my Sunday league team if he fancies it. We're down south, so that's not a problem. I can
Just
get
a
him
point on this. I think my take on it is I think at this point now, before the transfer window, it's hard to say because you can get teams in January who panic a little bit and go because the cost of getting relegated is so significant that you maybe can look at it and go, God, we're going to have to spend 80 million and go and get loads of players in and try and stay up that way. So it's hard to say at this point whether that bottom three will stay as it is, because if it was now February and clubs haven't got the opportunity to manoeuvre in a transfer market and they've only got what they've got, then I think you can definitively say it. I do feel somebody will get dragged into it, but I also feel those who are there on January the 1st will spend significantly, I think, to try and get themselves out of it or make a change again managerially.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We know West Ham will throw their checkbook around. It's nobody's business in January.
And I think Swansea will probably pull the trigger on Clement as well.
I think so, yeah. And yeah, the Dildo Brothers will be out in force in January. And Swansea got a few quid, haven't they? I don't think they'll be short of a few quid to spend if they get the right manager in. And yeah, you do wonder whether Swansea will stick to the Swansea way or maybe go a little bit off-piste again, maybe. Look continental, maybe. And yeah, it does make you wonder. Here, Carlo Ancelotti's free. Maybe not. But yeah, no, it's a very interesting race. The relegation battle has potentially more legs than the title race this season, so we'll be focusing on that I'm sure in weeks to come. However, we will draw our podcast to a close this week then for another week. It's probably our longest podcast ever, I think, so hopefully if you've made it this far you've enjoyed it. We always like to go a little bit longer, particularly when we've got all of the panel on, because it doesn't happen enough these days. So it's nice to have everybody's views. And thank you all for being with us this evening. Just a couple of little shout outs for us. As usual, as you've heard from the sting at the beginning, our good friends over at Four Elements putting in their time and money into this podcast and doing a bloody grand job as well. So as we always say, if you've got any information that you require or any sort of heads up on projects you might be looking to build as far as websites go, do hit up Chris and his team. If Twitter's your thing, you can find them at 4 Elements DES. They do some fantastic work, and Chris and the guys have been brilliant for us and to me personally all the way through the service they provided. So thank you very much to Chris and his crew. Also a little shout out to Pat, who's offered to do a bit of designing work for me this week in line with the Football Hipsters podcast. So stay tuned. We will be going through a little bit of a rebrand soon. I shall say no more at this stage, but we are likely to have a little bit of a change of style as far as our logos go. So keep an eye on that. And of course to Jimmy for his hard work with Pat in terms of our MLS coverage. Stay tuned because we will be recording a pod with them soon. And finally, a couple of new listeners, which is something I'd like to bring back in. A few new followers that I've seen pop up this week. At Rambo's Left Foot, he describes himself as an Arsenal, PSV and Bordeaux fan. That's quite an eclectic mix. So hello to you, sir or madam. I think you're a sir. Also Matthew Cundy, who's definitely a gentleman. He's a Sheffield Wednesday fan. So thank you for the follow there, Matthew, at Cundy_Matthew. Hopefully not in relation to Jason Cundy, because we all know Jason Cundy is a lovely chap. And also Sucheth, who's at Conjuru91. He's a Manchester United fan, I think, looking at his bio here, and definitely a fan of the Indian national side. So that's a rare follow. So thank you for joining us. And finally, Tom Baldry, who's at tbaldry27, describes himself as a football fan from across the world and self-proclaimed expert, football hipster and music snob. I like it. Just tell it exactly like it is, Tom. That's what I like to see. So thank you for tuning in, Tom. And in his picture, he's actually, it's a picture of him kind of covering his face in a Sassuolo shirt. Now, if that isn't hipster, nothing is. So welcome aboard, Tom. Thank you for the follow. And a final little shout out goes to an actual professional footballer. Anyone who saw the copy of Marca this week, I'm sure Joel's seen this, will have seen the pretty horrific scars and sort of rebuild of Santi Cazorla's ankle. I'm sure you saw this, Joel, did you, on the cover of Marca?
Yeah, I did see that.
Absolutely horrific. And in a world where we live in, where obviously a lot of us have fans of different clubs and different players, Santi Cazorla is one of the good guys of football. And I think it's safe to say, Joel, wish him a speedy recovery and hope that he at least gets to kick a ball again, because he was very close to losing a leg, wasn't he? Off the back of his...
I don't think anyone realised it was that bad, because obviously he's just been away from the game for so long, but obviously it's terrible. So, yeah, fingers crossed he gets back on the pitch. Well, I think the World Cup's going to come too soon for him, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd take him just getting into an Arsenal shirt for one more time. To be honest, it's that serious an injury. And if you haven't seen it, do check out that pictures. Although maybe not when you've had something to eat. Really, really poor lad, or poor gentleman, should say. But get well soon, Santi. If you're listening, I'm sure you are. But if you are, good luck and best wishes to you on your recovery. Right, that's that then. Thank you very much to my panel. So thank you very much to Lana. Thank you, Lana.
You're welcome. Sorry.
That's all right. You go and have your dinner. Thank you very much, Ross. What a pleasure it is to have your internet working for a whole podcast once again.
Yeah, whisper it quietly, but it held out. So thank you for having me.
This will be the last time we ever hear from you. Now you said that, that'll happen. Thank you to Joel for making your comeback, Joel. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
And thank you, Josh, for pressing the buttons as usual.
It's all right. It's been great as always.
As well as your opinions, of course, I should say that. Yes, please do follow us at the FH Podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes and YouTube. Special shout out to Mr. John Welsh as he sits and ploughs through the editing of this week after week. He might be getting a new job, so we might even have him back soon. Who'd have thought it? But yeah, big thank you to John. He does a lot of work behind the scenes, so thank you to him. And a final little nudge to you, the listeners. If there is a special that you want to do, so if you want to hear from one of our guys or girls a bit more, and you want to hear a Serie A special or a La Liga special or whatever it is, if there's a certain idea that you have, please do tweet us or send us a little email or DM or comment on our YouTube page as Thunder Road and Amelia did. Was it Emil? That's right. Give us a little comment. Let us know who you want to hear more of, and we will do our best to try and get a couple more specials in the can. But until then, enjoy the international break, if indeed that's possible. Keep your tweets and comments coming in. We really appreciate it. Do check out our GoFundMe page if you've got a few pence to spare. And until 2 weeks' time, we will speak to you very soon. We've been the Football Hipsters. Enjoy your football, and we'll speak to you shortly.